Muted, 1 second. Let me adjust the lights. It's rainy today. This looks, hold on. Let's see if I can do this. Is that? Maybe that helps. That's better, huh? Rainy day vibes? Yeah. So hopefully, so stay with us in case my power goes out. I don't know if y'all were watching stream yesterday, but I actually lost power like right as we were about to raid. Yeah, so hope y'all are doing okay. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Aldo Kanoja. Just a reminder that everything we discuss on stream today is intended to be for educational purposes only, and none of it is intended to be taken as medical advice. Yeah, so if y'all have a concern or question, please go see a licensed professional and get yourself some personalized medical advice. Couple of things. I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone who's been subbing. I know that we don't do like sub goals and like, you know, this kind of stuff. And we don't, we're here to help people. And so we don't frequently, you know, try to encourage people to sub and things like that. And at the same time, like for those of you that do support the stream through Twitch Prime subs, regular subs, gifting subs, etc., that does go a long way. And it does help us make more content and stream more and do things like that. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for everyone who has supported the stream in some way. We really do appreciate it. And if you're considering it, you know, we'd appreciate anything that you can share or offer, Twitch Prime, etc. So thank y'all very much. Couple of things to talk about. So this is pretty cool. So we've unlocked our second milestone for the Swap It Challenge. For people who don't know, the Swap It Challenge is a Discord challenge that is designed to help people replace, is designed to help people replace like useless technology habits with healthier habits. So, you know, there's some amount of technology usage that we have to do, but what we really want to do is like avoid just the useless stuff, right? Like the doom scrolling and like things like that. So our community has actually swapped out 1,000 hours of useless technology habits with more helpful things. So we've actually unlocked the 1,000,000 point milestone. I think we've got about 1 week left for the Swap It Challenge. And the whole point is that, you know, every week, it's not like you can swap out 6 hours of stuff a day. The goal is to swap out 5 minutes on week 1, 10 minutes on week 2, 15 minutes on week 3, and 20 minutes next week to build sustainable, healthy habits. So what we're going to do is a Saturday of jam-packed events on Discord. So y'all have unlocked that. And at 2,000,000 points, I'm going to do a bedtime ASMR stream. Maybe we'll get Ruby to help us out there. So the whole point is for us to swap out, you know, useless tech habits with more healthy, useful things. So reading a book, going, you know, stretching, even doing push-ups, cleaning your room, doing chores, touching grass, sitting under a tree, meditating, etc. So if y'all want to participate, hop onto the Discord at healthygamergg.gg/discord. In any text channel, you can type /swapit and submit, and then input your task and upload a photo. You don't have to show your face or anything like that. And accumulate some points and get healthier in life, if that makes sense. So the 2,000,000 point milestone is still locked, so y'all can join in and contribute and unlock that stream through your efforts. And this is the kind of thing where we want, you know, it's a community-driven event, so we want people to participate, and you can't do it on your own, right? So it's something that we all have to do together as a community. So today we've got another call-in stream. So what we're going to do is actually just hop on Discord and let's take a look. And our topic today for our call-in stream is going to be about what makes a good friend and how are your friendships. So I think a running theme in our community recently has been sort of like loneliness and isolation. And that's not just a it's not just like a romantic thing, right? So like a lot of what people struggle with is just making friends and forming connections and sort of like shallow connections on the internet and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking to people in our community just to hear a little bit about, how to what's going on with the friendships in their lives. So let's hop in and get started. The hair. All righty. Can we test audio real quick?
Sure. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Awesome. Sounds great to me.
Cool. Ready for first caller?
Yes, absolutely. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, friend. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing well today.
Cool.
Can you tell me what you go by?
I go by a boss.
Okay. Welcome,
Uh,
Abbas.
This is kind of crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I've been watching your content for a long time, and it's helped a lot with learning how to listen to people and how to talk to people and notice my own emotions. So this is kind
Awesome.
of crazy.
I'm very happy that it's been helpful to you. So how are your friendships? How's life going in the world of your friends and things like that?
So for me, I'm kind of keeping a lot of long distance friendships where we mostly talk on Discord. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we, my main group of friends, we went to high school together, and then after college, we all moved to all kinds of different states. Um, and so to me, this problem has shown itself more recently. So I've been going through a breakup, and that's been a hard time. And whenever I bring it up to them, they're very supportive of me, which is great and reassuring for me. But I feel almost guilty bringing it up a lot because we don't have a particularly formal or regular way for talking through our emotions or talking through our days. Usually we get on Discord, play League, talk about League, um, or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever it is that we're playing. And so I think I imagine that I wouldn't feel as guilty going to them with my if I'm going through a hard time, like, oh, I'm thinking about her again. If they were also if we were all communally talking about our feelings and how we're doing. I'm assuming that this is largely like a guy thing. I imagine a lot of guys go through this in a lot of guy friendships where you don't really talk about how you feel or tough times and things like that. So I was wondering how to introduce more regular ways of talking outside of games.
Absolutely. So let me just make sure I understand your situation. It's a I'm really glad you're calling in today, boss, because I think that this is something that a lot of people do struggle with. So if I heard you correctly, you had a group of IRL friends in high school or college, and after college, I believe you went your separate ways, and y'all
Right.
have continued to stay in touch over the internet and Discord. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yep.
And most of the time, the nature of your social interaction is like gaming related. So y'all will hop on, y'all will play League, Yu-Gi-Oh, whatever. Is that
Hmm.
also correct?
Yep.
And you're going through a breakup, you're kind of leaning on them for support. It sounds like they're actually supportive, but I'm hearing that you feel guilty because it almost sounds kind of one way. It's sort of like, when they are hanging out with you, they're not asking for your emotional support. You're not supporting them through a breakup. They're kind of logging on to have fun.
Hmm.
And when you're kind of logging on and you reach out for support, like it's kind of one way in terms of how the support goes.
Yeah, I've been trying to kind of load balance, as weird as that sounds. You know, one time I'll go through a hard time, I'll text one friend, and then I'll keep a rotation of friends of, 4 or 5 people to talk to, so that way it's not like an everyday thing or an every week thing for the same person.
So, what are you trying to accomplish by load balancing?
I'm trying not not overbear one person with all of my for me, I'm going through a sad time, right? So I don't want to have the same person feel like they have to support me.
Okay. And
And I feel like it would be easier for the group altogether if it's multiple people supporting each other.
okay, so all right, so let's understand this problem. So you feel guilty, right?
Yeah.
And the reason that you feel guilty is because there's one way of support. Like one way. It's a one-way road.
Yeah.
And since it's one way, what you're sort of doing is you don't want too much traffic down that road. So what you're kind of doing is creating 5 different one-way streets with 5 different friends so that you're kind of balancing the load of them supporting you.
Yes.
And then you're also kind of noticing that maybe it's a masculine thing, maybe it isn't, but definitely in your case and in your particular group, you struggle to sort of understand how to like broach the topic of like, how do we talk more about things that are not gaming?
Right. Exactly.
And so,
Unrelated.
yeah,
Would it help for me to turn on my camera, just like eye contact wise, or?
it's your choice. So I'm not going to stream you. I turn on my camera on Discord so that you don't see the stream delay.
Yeah, it feels weird. I have a personal hard time talking with people if like they don't have their cameras on.
You're
Just
welcome to turn it on.
yeah.
I can, and then I'll move things over. I just don't want to leak you accidentally.
That's all good.
Okay, so I just can't. Yeah. So, oh man, this is so much nicer.
Right? Yeah.
We should think about next time. You know, if people are comfortable showing their face, then everyone can enjoy. Because you're such a seeing your
I'm a
face
model, I know.
makes me
Yeah.
feel so much more connected to you.
Yeah, it feels so much easier than just talking to my Discord AVI is Cloudy and Smokeball, just a random.
Yeah. So I want you
Yeah.
to. I want to ask you, boss. What did you just do just now by sort of asking if you wanted me to, if I wanted you to turn on your camera? What did you just do there? It's great.
Um, I wanted to make eye contact, so I asked you if that was cool with you. I don't
Okay.
know.
That's pretty cool. Right.
Yeah,
So
I somehow don't have a hard time asking strangers for favors and questions. I don't know
yeah.
how that
Do you
happened.
have a hard time asking your friends for favors?
Oh yeah,
How
yeah.
do you understand that?
Um, how? Uh, so in high school, I noticed this a lot where I started joining theater things in high school, and it's a lot harder to perform in front of friends than it is in front of strangers. Um, it's a lot harder to ask, like if a stranger sees me drop a book and they pick it up for me, I'm like, all right, thanks, move on. But if my friend does it, I feel like, oh my God, I do this every time. Uh, or if I feel sad and I reach out to them, I'm like, oh man, I'm being sad again. Um,
I'm,
I feel like it's too much.
I'm noticing that you have a problem owing your friends things. Balance with your friendship sounds very important to you.
Yeah, I view it more as me being guilty. I feel guilty a lot.
What are
Um,
you guilty of?
oh, so many things. I'm guilty of not doing a good job at work. I'm guilty of not reaching out to friends first. A lot of times they'll reach out to me. I'm guilty of asking people for things and then like a lot of times I'll call people, be like, "Hey, do you remember that show you watched? Do you recommend it? Okay, cool, bye." And that's it.
So
Um,
you're getting something from them, but you're not giving anything in return.
yeah, that's the impression I get. Um, they haven't said that to me, but that is, I don't know, I'm trying not to do that anymore.
Okay. Have you ever asked?
No, I just recognize from one person, one friend has been like, "Hey, wait, hold on. How are you doing? I haven't seen you in 6 months. What's going on?" Um, and that's only happened once. But yeah, I feel guilty about a lot of things.
I see that. So let's kind of talk through this in a couple of different ways. So the first is that it does seem like you're a little bit prone to feeling guilty. and I'm sort of noticing almost this pattern where if you've got a relationship, this didn't quite resonate with you, but this is sort of what I heard, and I'm sure there's more nuance to it, but that like this one-way traffic thing seems to bother you a lot. So if your friend like picks up a book for you, in a sense, it almost seems like, I mean, everyone drops books, but I imagine you would feel more comfortable if they helped you out with something, if you were able to help them out with something.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then also it's kind of like with this whole thing about, oh, hey, is that show good? Like, thanks a lot. Okay, thanks, bye. You know, so you're getting something from them and you're not giving anything in return. And so I think there are a couple of things that we can sort of give you kind of very concrete kind of suggestions for you to sort of think about and see what you feel comfortable with about how to change the dynamic of your friend group. But I think a lot of this comes down to something kind of simple, which is that I'm noticing that a lot of your guilt or a lot of your mistakes are actually not signaled to you by your friends.
No.
They're actually like from here,
Yes.
right? What do you think
Absolutely.
about that?
I think it's overall a mechanism that serves me well to treat people well and to I think where I got it from was I had a family friend who for context, I'm a Muslim, so he would say that at the day of judgment, you know, God essentially presents you a book of all the things you've done and you have to review it. And the guy mentioned how people who keep a journal of the things they've done in this life, even before the day of judgment, their process is quicker. I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to do, but I started doing it mentally of like, this is how I did well, this is what I could have done better. Yeah. And so I start keeping track of all the things I do and all the mistakes I make and all the things I need to improve on.
Do you think you were doing that before your friend shared that with you?
I might have, but this was probably 8 years ago, so it's hard for me to remember that far back.
Okay. So, Abbas, I'm going to share some thoughts with you, but let's start by kind of organizing. So I think there's like 2 or 3 different layers to this.
Yeah, I got off track. My bad.
No. It's good. I mean, that's how humans work, right? So human beings are complex, and your answer or solution isn't going to be simple. Did you just make another mistake? Did we just add something to the book?
Yes,
Oh
because
my.
like even with therapy, I go in and I plan out the story of like this is how my week went, this is all the things I want to cover, and then my therapist is like, let's talk about that. When I'm only 5 minutes into the story, and then I leave the session thinking, oh man, I forgot all these things to talk about. I didn't do all this, and yeah,
Yeah. So you perceived yourself as making a mistake. Now something has been written in the book of
yes,
judgment that,
yes,
oh, Abbas is supposed to talk about his friendships, and here he is talking about his guilt and his spirituality and the way that his mind
yeah,
works. Oh no.
yeah.
Right. So you do you think you made a mistake there?
Um, I didn't follow through with my intention, so yeah,
Yeah. So look at my face. Do I think you
yeah.
made a mistake?
No, I don't think so, but it weighs on me anyway.
It weighs on you anyway. What weighs on you?
Um, that I didn't follow through with my intent, that I deviated from the prompt.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I personally found it useful that you shared that stuff.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
I feel concerned, um, because if I'm already deviating this far in, um, then if I keep talking, I'll keep giving more context, and then I'll deviate even further, and then it's like, how do I explain 22 years of my thought processes? How old am I? I'm 20, 22 years of my thought processes in half an hour. I can't, and then it's like, it becomes too much.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you believe you made a mistake.
Yes,
I don't believe you made a mistake.
that's nice.
Right. So we're agreeing to disagree there.
Yeah.
I see that. So
Yeah.
now here's my concern is
Okay.
like you're talking about a relationship, right? Like a relationship with your friends. And right now, so let's say I try to reassure you and I say, bro, it's really not a problem. I'll explain why in a second. But you play LOL, right? So like you have reassurance resistance. So like as I try to reassure you, like you're resistant to that. So 90% of that reassurance you block. You know, because you tank it up. And what does that mean for you and your friendships and your guilt?
I play League like it's a single player game, and I think it applies here as well.
Beautiful. How?
I learned if I want to climb in League, I was watching LS, who's a big coach, and he says it doesn't matter what your other teammates do, you can only fix what you've done. And I think, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't look at the mini map. That's on me. My bad. And so, even though there's a lot of information to take and there's a lot of different routes and everybody's going to make mistakes, it's my fault. And so even if my teammate carries, if I had a bad game, I had a bad game. Even if they brought it through and we still won and we had fun, whatever. But I still didn't look at the minimap. I still didn't track everything. I didn't do everything I could.
Yeah. So I've heard this a lot. So this is maybe a little sneak preview. So I've been doing a secret experiment outside of creating content. And I play more Dota than League. And I know this sounds kind of weird, but everyone sort of says if you want to climb in a multiplayer game, just play it like a single player game. Like you can't rely on your teammates. You can't, it's just a single player game. There just happen to be like bots, treat people like bots. And that's the best way to climb. So I know this sounds kind of weird, but I think that that's absolutely idiotic because it's a multiplayer game. So I did this experiment. And hopefully we'll make a YouTube video about it at some work. It's a lot of work. Where I had 2 accounts, and I calibrated. So this is Dota, so I don't know if this works out perfectly in League, but I calibrated on both accounts, just me, like playing on both accounts simultaneously. And the only difference is in one account, I communicated with my team, and in the other account, I just muted everyone and didn't talk at all. And the MMR difference between the two, I don't know how this translates into League, maybe someone in chat can help us out, is about 1,000 MMR, which is like pretty big. Like it's huge. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but like in a multiplayer game, when you actually communicate effectively, and I think the reason that people say don't communicate in multiplayer games is because we don't actually work on communication the way that we do on like last hitting or rotating or clicking buttons or things like that. Communication is a skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason that people say mute people is because we don't know how to communicate with our team effectively.
Yeah. This is somewhat related, but like I realize I learned over the course of the last relationship that, if I'm listening, I can't do anything else. I have to like focus 100%, and I've had to work on communication exactly like everything else, where like you taught in one of your videos, if you want to listen to somebody, repeat back what they said. And so that was something I had to build, like all the other skills.
Yeah. So I think if we kind of come back to your interpersonal relationships, I'm noticing that, like, I mean, you said it beautifully that you play it the same way you play League, which is like a single player game. Like you don't. So here's what we're going to do. So here's how I'm kind of understanding your situation. So on the one level, there's some stuff that is actually a single player kind of quest. So your propensity towards guilt, your kind of spiritual perspective, which kind of, I can't tell if that, I want to say you're sort of misinterpreting something there in terms of the religion of Islam, but I'm not an expert in Islam and you're the Muslim. So like, if that's,
I'm not either. I don't know.
So, but something tells me that sometimes what happens is we have religious or spiritual traditions that intersect with particular vulnerabilities in our psychology. And then what happens is instead of like recognizing this as a problem within me that I'm prone to guilt, and instead of like working on that in sort of a healthy way, sometimes what happens is religion will come in and say, no, you're not prone to guilt. That's not a problem you should fix. That's part of the religion. You need to be guiltier. and it'll kind of reinforce it. And in my experience, like sometimes that can be unhealthy. I'm not saying that religion is bad. I think it's, there are vulnerabilities in our psychology that can be exacerbated by all kinds of external influences, whether they be friends, family, religion, philosophy. Like, people can sort of get into nihilism and stuff like that in a very unhealthy way. So that's just kind of the personal piece. And then I want to talk a little bit about the interpersonal piece. So very concretely, if we kind of go back to the core issue, it's that you just play League with your friends and you're kind of leaning on them for emotional support. So this is where I would really encourage like communication. So I know it sounds kind of weird, but I'd start with a simple question like, hey, I've been going through a breakup recently. I really appreciate your support. What's it like for you when I ask, when we like talk about this instead of talking about League?
That's scary.
What's scary about it?
It's trying to tread ground in a totally, like, the grass isn't cut, it's all tall grass, trying to figure out how to navigate a new avenue for the relationships in my life. And so that's scary because I don't know how receptive they'll be to that. Maybe they'll just want to play League. Maybe they just, they had a long day at work, they talked about it with somebody else, and so they just want to chill.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's unknown.
It's an unknown. Absolutely. Right. And so you talked earlier about how maybe this is a dynamic with men. And I think that generally, like culturally, like we're not, my experience growing up as a man, I can't really say if it's exclusively for men. Maybe women do this too. Maybe trans people do it. Who knows? Right. We can't really comment on them. But I know that generally speaking, we just play games and we don't really talk about stuff much,
Yeah. Yeah. I've had to bring emotion wheels with my friends of like, they say, I'm feeling bad. And I say, okay, what do you mean? Pull up an emotion wheel, please. And we'll go through it. And they'll say, oh, I'm feeling guilty, anxious.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you think you're helping them in that moment?
I hope so. That was one-time success rate so far. It's
Okay.
1 for 1.
So that's also the kind of thing where I think you should ask for feedback in that situation. Be like, hey, was it kind of weird that I like brought up this emotion wheel? Or was that, just like talk to them? Because I think the issue here is that you're kind of operating alone and you're not getting any feedback. And you've got to be careful because there's that reassurance resistance where even if they say, oh no, it's totally fine, boss, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, you've got to be a little bit careful about your reaction to when you ask a question. You really have to listen and try to accept what they say, whether it's good or bad. And even if they say, hey, it's a pain in the ass, I just want to play League, how would that make you feel?
No, I get it.
Right?
Maybe another time.
So that's like pretty cool because even if you're cutting the tall grass and there's a gigantic snake underneath, now you know what their boundary is and you're not going to burden them anymore. So like communication is really important. The other thing that I'd recommend, and this is going to be even scarier, is that you actually tell your friends like, hey, do y'all have time for like a call to talk about stuff that isn't League?
I think that'd be cool. It's a lot easier to do that in person because, you wrap up a YouTube video or whatever and you just chill. But online, like...
So I mean, if you've got a group chat or whatever, like I would actually orchestrate that conversation and almost take something of a leadership role where I would share with your friend group, hey, here's been my experience. I went through a breakup recently. I've leaned on y'all for support. One thing that I noticed is that it feels kind of one way to me because I don't know if it's just because y'all haven't gone through a breakup or, what's going on here, but I just wanted to let you know that I've really appreciated y'all being there for me and it means a lot to me. And my door is always open if anyone needs support. And also I'm kind of curious, like, how do y'all feel about talking, like getting together and talking about stuff or like, that isn't League? And just communicate with your team. You're not saying, and this is where people kind of screw up with communication is that oftentimes they think that like communication means telling your teammates what to do. Hey, like we need to go kill Baron or the dragon or whatever, right? Like we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. Whereas like being an effective communicator, especially in a MOBA, I found it's way, way better to ask questions instead of telling people what to do. So like you can ask people like, hey, do you want me to ward on the top side of the map or the bottom side of the map? Like where do you want to play as a carry?
Yeah.
And then, like, the neat thing, the reason that you gain 500 MMR from that move is that if you ward someone and your carry is playing on the opposite side and they get killed, instead of raging at them, if you ask them ahead of time, hey, where do you want me to ward? They, like, subconsciously, they're going to go play around your vision.
Oh, yeah, yeah, because
And then they
you'll
won't
have
feed.
that link.
It's, like,
Yeah.
bizarre. But if you tell him, hey, dumbass, go play around the vision, you're on the wrong side of the map. They're just going to rage at you. They're going to int down mid. You get like, so like, this is where, I know it sounds kind of weird, but maybe video games are a good analogy for real life. And what I would really encourage is that you just have a conversation with your friends and be like, hey, I really appreciate what y'all have done. I'm kind of curious, like, if anyone is like, have y'all gone through anything, you know, that I can help you with? You can even like open the door in that session or just kind of talk to them about, is this okay? Is this not okay? And the one thing you've got to be kind of careful about is your reassurance resistance. Because this may be the kind of thing where if they say like, oh, no, it's totally fine. Or maybe they'll say something wild, which is, no, like, I actually like, it's so nice to hear that you appreciate it. It makes me feel like I did something useful with my day instead of just playing League to be able to help a friend of mine. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to tap into that quite yet.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
We're all still in the man, that's crazy phase. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, I think the key thing though is that, you know, have a conversation with them. Like, you can solicit feedback from both individuals and even get together as a group, because like, this is what needs to happen, right? Someone needs to take the lead and change the dynamic of your communication and open the door for a conversation that is not just video games. How does that sound to you?
It sounds like it's exactly what I'm looking for. I now need to think and reflect on how to do that more pragmatically. Like, once we get in the call, I imagine scheduling will be fine. Once we get in the call, how do we start talking about our day? I guess I just have to have questions lined up, like, how's work been the past month?
Yeah.
How's
So I'm going to give you some pragmatic tips. This is great. We're
Cool.
not going to leave you
Okay,
hanging
cool.
here, boss. So
Cool,
I would
thanks.
schedule a call, right? And I would tell people like, hey, I wanted to, if I were in your shoes, you don't have to duplicate this precisely, but I would say, you know, hey, I was just hoping to hop on a call with everybody for like maybe half an hour, and I wanted to talk a little bit about communication. A couple of things. I noticed that most of the time when we talk about games. As y'all know, I've been going through a breakup recently, and I found a lot of like really awesome support from y'all. So first of all, I wanted to thank everyone. The other question that I kind of had is that as y'all have been supporting me, I sort of feel like that's a little bit lopsided. And that I want to just tell people that I'm here to support y'all. And I was just curious about having a conversation about whether we want to like intentionally talk about things going on in our lives that are not gaming. That's why I'd like to meet and to just basically figure out if people are on board for this kind of thing. Are you interested?
Yeah.
And then you can go to like, I wouldn't come in with like, hey, what's going on in your life? Like, hey, like, are you dating? And like, you know, don't come in with a set of questions, because you got to get people on board. They've got to like queue up first, right? You got to accept the party invite, and then you have to sign up for the queue. You don't want to just like queue up and then like they're in a game and they're like, hey, we didn't sign up for this. Does that make sense? So I think frame setting here is very important.
Yeah, and I liked how you framed it as thank you for the support, because personally 6 months ago, you know, I would have said, sorry, sorry I've been so down, or sorry I've been relying so heavily on y'all. So yeah.
Yeah, what's the difference there? Beautiful.
I got this from a Day 9 video where he talked about flipping apologies for appreciation. So instead of saying, sorry, I'm rambling, thank you for listening. Sorry, I've been so sad, thanks for your patience, type of thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's been helping a lot.
Yeah, so that's going to help with your guilt, right? Because it's like there's a lot of good subtlety there. One is the acknowledgement that it's okay to be struggling, and that's not something you need to apologize for. And then you can express gratitude. So I think you can give that a shot. Just be mentally prepared that this is often like sometimes it's a lot for people and they don't really know how to respond. So if it doesn't work out, you know, come back to Discord, talk to us, talk to the community about it, and or maybe post on subreddit or whatever, whether it goes well or doesn't go well. Like, give us an update because we'd love to hear. And for other people who are listening as well, if you want to like deepen your relationship with your friends, this is kind of exactly how you do it, especially because there's like a, I don't know how to say this, there's like a unwritten set of rules, and no one knows how to like broach, like no one knows how to like enter the unexplored territory of like talking about feelings. We'll kind of get on, help each other out with here and there and things like that. But like, this is like, you just have a conversation about it. And ask people, if you're worried, if you're feeling guilty, don't sit with that guilt on your own. Ask people, hey, what's it like? Is it okay that I do this? Like, I'd love to help you out. I'm always available to talk. I kind of feel like I owe you, and people will say, oh, like if they say that, like, if you say that, boss, what are your friends going to say?
I don't know. I kind of just want to do this for me because, like, for me, I love my friends get together. We play Yu-Gi-Oh once a week. I love that. But honestly, my favorite parts are the half hour as we're building up and we just catch up and we just talk. Like, oh yeah, I went to this food place. I saw this movie. Like, that to me is my favorite part of the night, when we just talk to each other.
Yeah.
And so I hope they're receptive to it. And if they're not, I don't know. There's like 8 friends in the group, so chances are at least some of them.
Absolutely, right?
I'm not too concerned about that. Yeah.
So, and in terms of the guilt and the spirituality and stuff like that, I think that's maybe a topic for a different day. Does that sound okay?
That's a different day for sure. That's something I got to talk with my parents and figuring that out.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, any kind of, would you like to kind of summarize takeaways? Like, what's the situation that you're in, and what do you think you should do about it? Like, what sits well with you?
So, my current situation, I guess, as a recap, would be I have a group of friends, and we're long distance, so we don't see each other in person very much. When we talk online over Discord, it's usually about games and through games exclusively. And I want to try to bridge the gap of having a more interpersonal relationship. And so to do that, some ways would be framing why I want to do it, saying like, I appreciate how you guys have been supporting me in tough times. And I either open the door or my plan would be to schedule like, hey, Saturday night, can we hang out and just talk? And seeing how they respond to that, and also, at least for my personal situation, if I feel guilt, recognizing why and asking the person more directly, and seeing how they feel about it. Maybe they don't see the same thing I do at all. So, what else?
Great.
Oh, I think having face cams helps a lot. It's a lot harder to keep track of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
over voice. Yeah.
So great tips. So just to clarify a couple things. So I think asking your individual friends how they receive and perceive your leaning on them for support, like whether it's okay or it's too much or too little, signaling to them that your door is open if they ever need that, right? Because sometimes it's like hard to, because like I can imagine that they're in a situation where they're feeling guilty too. I don't want to burden a boss with my problems, but you're totally fine with it. And so everyone's like, I don't want to burden my friend with my problems. I don't want to burden my friend with my problems. So y'all are just sitting there in a single, like you're in party queue, but everyone's playing a single player game.
Yeah.
Right. And then you don't, I'm not going to rotate to their lane. They're not going to rotate to my lane. And then y'all are just going to lose. Whereas like we just need rotations both ways. And that's how you win a game. Right. And so sort of signaling to people that you appreciate what they've done for you. How is it for them? And that you'd love to support them if they ever need it.
Appreciate what they do, see how it is for them, and see what we can do to build on that.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And then just watch out for your reassurance resistance.
I will work on that another day.
Just notice it. Notice like, oh, like this person is telling me something and I'm not able to take it in. That's where you're going to start with that.
That's definitely a problem.
Yep.
Reassurance, resistance. Yeah. I'm gonna keep these noted. All right.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abbas. Take care.
You too. Bye.
All right, that was great. Who's next? Bum, bum, bum. Oh, hold on. Did I? Nope. I'm just alone. Was that good, chat? Helpful? So, seriously, like such a common problem. You know what I mean? Like, we have these friends and we have these patterns with our friends, and we don't know how to like move things to the next level, right? Everyone talks about taking things to the next level in romantic relationships, but we don't know how to like deepen these platonic relationships when we've got these anchors like video games and these other sorts of things. So sometimes you just gotta have a conversation about it. And the problem is we can say, oh, just communicate better or have a conversation, but like no one teaches you like literally what to say, when to say it, how to say it. All of that is really important and really like lays the foundation for deepening a friendship. Okay.
Ready for next?
Absolutely, Tech Teller. Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
Hello.
How do I make the icon bigger?
Like
Okay.
my face? You can click on my face.
Yeah, it was fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I also turn on my camera?
You absolutely can. We're not going to share it with stream today because that wasn't the plan. Unless you really want to, which, well, yeah, let's just do, I mean, you can turn on your camera. I'm going to see it, but we're not,
Okay.
you know, privacy and all that.
Yeah, cool.
Hello.
Okay.
Oh my God, it's so
Hi.
much better with cam.
Yeah.
What do you go by?
Fortunate souls on Twitch have no idea.
Yeah, they're going to have
But
to.
yeah, my name's Clara.
Okay, nice to meet you, Clara. How are your friendships going?
I think at the moment that they're going really good. And
Awesome.
I don't know.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
I don't know. I mean, really, for me, I think it's come down to finding the right people, I guess.
How do you find the right people?
And ooh. Remaining open despite rejection.
Remaining open despite rejection. That sounds like it's painful advice to follow.
Little. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, but that's you know, if that's what it is, that's what it is. Like life ain't easy sometimes.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking about that, or you wanted to talk about something else, or what?
I mean, I'm actually okay with talking about whatever, but original topic that I wanted to talk about was also about like transactional
Yeah.
relationships or transactional friendships.
Can you tell us about that? Because that I think is really important.
Well, it's because okay, maybe I will give a little bit of background. I guess it was like 8 months ago at this point. 8 months ago, I had like a really big falling out with one of my longest friends that I had from high school.
Okay.
And I still don't entirely know why,
Okay.
because there were a lot of factors to it. But one of the things that she was very upset about was that she felt that the relationship was one-sided in the respect that she was supporting me, but for whatever reason, she didn't feel like I was supporting her. I think it was really that she was having a little bit of a, I don't know, like a freak out and some like abandonment wounds.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to handle the situation because
It's interesting because other people can't see your face, but they can definitely hear your sighs, like the.
yeah. Because I don't know, because I can't help but laugh sometimes because God, it was such a mess.
Tell us about it. I mean,
Um,
if you're comfortable, right? And we also have to acknowledge that this is your perspective, right? So there may be
yeah, I
another
know, yeah.
perspective, and maybe you're a raging narcissist who's completely unempathic with your
The
friends,
thing.
right? So we have to acknowledge that sometimes when we hear stories like this, it makes the other person seem really unreasonable, but maybe you're the unreasonable one. So let's hear. I mean, you feel comfortable talking about it? Because I think this is really common where we have long-term friendships and there's people feel like there's a needs mismatch. And so how do we
So-
navigate that?
Yeah, it's like one question that I had in my mind afterwards was if this was how she really felt about me, then why was she ever friends with me in the first place? I feel like I've always been this kind of person.
Okay.
Um, sorry.
Yeah. So
Um,
can you tell us a little bit more about the situation? Do you feel comfortable sharing that, or do you think it would be like violating your friend's privacy?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. Um, and I can give some details.
Sure.
The whole saga. Sometime around like 2 years ago, I started having like a really hard time. Like my mental health deteriorated so much, and I think that a lot of it had to do with like trauma that I never processed, but I didn't realize that that's what it was.
Okay.
So I went down the internet rabbit hole of self-diagnosis, and and for about a year, I thought that I was autistic. Obviously, I don't know. I say obviously, but I do feel like in the end I'm not actually.
Okay.
Um, I was having conversations with my high school friend about this, and he started thinking that she was autistic too.
Okay.
And we really bonded over that
Okay.
for a period of time. At the time, I really did feel like mutually supportive relationship.
Okay.
Then when I started to get better, as I was like, I guess using a lot of your content, a lot about processing trauma,
Uh-oh.
um,
Okay.
got better. Yeah, I got better. And one day I told her that I didn't think I was autistic anymore, and I told her the reasons. And she sent me a couple of paragraphs of a lot of angriness. um,
What was your perception
she
about
did,
what was she
I
angry
don't
about?
know. I would like to erase it from my mind. She was angry about me coming across as narcissistic, essentially.
How so?
Oh, again, it was a lot of things.
Okay.
Because because in like yeah, I guess I let my ego out.
Okay.
I think I don't know. Yeah, I
So
shouldn't be so kind to myself. I shouldn't be so self-compassionate and say my perspective.
no, well, so hold on a second. So, and how did you respond to those texts?
How did I respond? Well, it was very confusing because she said, I understand if you're angry about this, we don't have to talk about this now. But it seemed like she really wanted to talk about it now because it was no, it seemed urgent. So I tried to talk to her about it and like tell her more about my perspective. It only made it worse. And through the course of the conversation, I don't know, she said things like you're the one who wants us to be the same and like if I tried to compliment her, I tried to compliment her once where I said like, "Oh, you're one of the few people who I felt has ever been able to understand me." She took that negatively. I'm sorry.
How so?
It was just another, like all the I statements. You know how when they tell you to use I statements when you talk about your feelings?
Yeah.
And but then if you use the word I too much, it makes you seem like you're very self-absorbed.
Yeah. That's what concerns me about when they tell you to do something. Clara, the way that you're talking right
Therapist who
now
told me.
makes me feel this and this and this, and I feel this and I feel this and I feel this and I feel this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because, okay. So I can see how that is challenging. Let me ask you, is this something that has happened with other people?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. And so help me understand your perception of that.
You know, it was a long time ago. Again, I still don't understand.
Okay. But it sounds like
It was,
you have so it doesn't sound so this is like a one-off in terms of recently, and it sounds like you've made new friends, and that this is not, would you say this is a common occurrence for you or less so? Not a common occurrence. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Like,
So it's
I would like
yeah.
some of the friends that I have now, I mean, they say I've just been unlucky. I don't know.
What do you think about
I
that?
am kind of looking for answers. I am looking for answers like, is it really me? Is there really something in me that is making other people react this way? Or has it just been lucky?
Yeah, so I think chances are, so generally speaking, when we look at things like this, chances are it's both, right? So
Yeah.
let's just like take a 5,000 foot view. Human beings tend to have particular patterns, and those particular patterns are going to evoke particular responses. And so, do you have a contribution to this? I think yes. Does that mean it's your fault? I wouldn't quite go that far, because sometimes we think that a contribution equals fault, right? So like, you know, let's say, I'll give you just kind of an example where, like, let's say that like I'm very, very giving with my money. And if friends need money, if they're like on hard times, I'm very, very generous. And over time, that may attract a particular kind of friend, may muddy a particular kind of relationship. And what I sort of find myself in the situation where the more generous I am, the more lopsided the relationship becomes, and the more frustrated my friends feel with me. And then I get really confused by that, because it's like, I'm being really generous. Like, why are you being frustrated with me? Does that make sense to you at all? We're not saying that this is you, by the way, but does that kind of compute how that could happen?
Yeah.
And what do you understand from that situation? The hypothetical one.
Actually, can you repeat that?
Yeah,
I
sure.
really kind of spaced out.
That's totally fine. It was actually like not the best situation. But let's say I'm financially generous with my friends. And over time,
Need to give me the money. Yeah.
you know, like I get into weird situations where I think like it's kind of weird, because the more generous I am, like the worse my relationships become. And people should respond by like being generous back to me, but that doesn't seem to happen. Does that make sense to you? Like that, how that could happen?
Yeah.
And help me understand how that makes sense to you.
Well, because people do things for another person, actually personally understand this perspective, but at least I've able to extrapolate that when people do things for other people, they form like an unspoken social contract in their heads that I do something for this person, then they're gonna pay me back
Yep.
in the same way.
Well said. Right? So it's not, so the simplified version of this is, oh, people, you're just going to attract people who use you for your money. And even
Yeah.
if you're that person who's generous, that's what you're going to start to think. Everyone out there is mean. Everyone out there is trying to take advantage of me. But there may be like deeper layers to that, which is that when I'm generous, is it truly something that's given with no expectation? Or is there a hidden expectation in my mind that when they don't pay me back, I'm like, oh, hey, here's $500. Oh, I don't know, it's going to take me a while to pay you back. Oh, no, you never have to pay me back. No, like, don't worry about it. Like, we're friends. Like, what's a little bit of money between friends? They're like, okay, fine. If you say so, I never have to pay you back. Where's my money? You never paid me back.
Person who says, I'm the person who takes people's word for it. Like, I'm the person who's like, okay, then I don't have to pay you back. And then they get mad at me and I'm so confused and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, right. Okay. So maybe it's a hypothetical example, but seems like it's resonating. So, and this is where like,
Well, I've never done that.
yeah, but who's at fault here? Right. And
Yeah.
that's what's really important here is that we tend to, when we think about interpersonal relationships, we think like I'm at fault or the other person is at fault. Whereas what I'd love it if you could kind of reconceptualize a little bit is that, is this your fault? Is this you, or is it your friend? It's neither. It's an intersectional result. Right?
Yeah, and that's what I really, God, I wish I could have somehow did that to her. But I think she was kind of wrapped up in the expectation, and I don't know.
Yeah, so I'd be careful about that, because if you're sort of saying like explain that to her, that could be what turns people off. Because if you're like, oh, like, so
Yeah.
anyway, so let me take a step back. So here's a couple of things that I would kind of think about. Okay, let's just think in general. So let's say that you've got a friend. Things are kind of weird. Like, y'all are getting along really well. You connect over something, and by the way, connecting over mental health conditions is like one of the deepest forms of connection that you can have with another human being. I've seen it so much, especially at places like rehabs, where like, addiction and sobriety really brings people together. So much romance on inpatient psychiatric units. So it's a very actually powerful bond, right? Because like conditions relating to mental health are very, very isolating. And when you find someone who like connects with you on that level, it can form a very strong bond. I think that the thing that you kind of noticed, which I think is an excellent observation, is when your friend came at you with this wall of text that you were not like prepared for, your response was to try to explain yourself further. And what effect did that have?
Terrible.
Yep. Right?
I didn't want to explain myself further.
You didn't
It
want
was
to?
other people want to. I don't, whatever.
Yeah. So that's where, if I can make a recommendation, anytime you have a conflict with a friend, instead of trying to explain yourself further, try to understand them better. What do you think about that?
That's what that means.
So let's like talk through that, right? So a couple of things. So one thing is that some of this stuff could just be like the mother of all projections, right? Where it's like, you wanted us to be the same. Maybe like she wants you to be the same. Like, so sometimes like there's that kind of thing. We don't know. So,
Yeah.
but I think that's the kind of thing where if someone comes at you with something that's very, very confusing, if it's an attack, you're going to feel defensive. If you feel defensive, you're going to want to explain. And the more that you explain, the less heard the other person is going to feel. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So you're saying
Right.
sure. So I get the sense you're not really buying what I'm selling. So what's your hesitation?
Oh, I just. Sorry, I feel kind of hopeless often about, or like, able to have conversations with people when there's like a problem.
What makes you feel hopeless about having conversations around problems?
I've never been able to solve a problem with a friend. I've, but I can't think of a single time when I ever succeeded.
Okay. So, I mean, so then it makes a lot of sense that you would feel hopeless and you're skeptical.
I'm very skeptical. Sorry.
That's fine. Are you getting the sense that you being skeptical is a problem?
Yeah.
Help me understand, why is being skeptical a problem?
Because it confirms how, like, how my social skills must be the reason why she thought I was autistic in the first place. And I don't listen to other people. And sorry.
Keep going.
She was actually the first person who told me that she thought I was autistic.
Okay. Have you considered actually seeing a clinician about that?
I did try actually, but all of the the people I saw think that you are or something.
I'm sorry, you cut out there. And by the way, you may want to move your mic threshold or switch to push to talk. Because I think it's sometimes the Discord is clipping the very beginning of your words.
How do I do that?
So
I
go.
see it.
You got it? Oh, yeah. So you have to set a push to talk key. So if you go to settings and then go to voice and video, and then you can you can click the push to talk button on input mode, and then you can set a particular key. Does that help? Okay, we're not able to hear you, so not sure. You got to hit the key, though.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now that's perfect.
Okay. Cool.
Thank you very much for doing that. I think it makes it easier for us to hear you. Yeah, so being skeptical isn't okay.
I guess so.
What do you think, though?
I don't know. I think I just spend a lot of time thinking about what other people think about me.
Okay.
And if other people don't think it's okay, then it's not okay. I still kind of have that default mode in my brain a little bit.
Yeah. So I think it sounds to me like you're someone who's very thoughtful about your relationships, right? Like you think a lot about how to, and that's, I imagine it must be really frustrating for you because you spend a lot of time thinking about it. It sounds like you're almost feeling kind of hopeless about repairing relationships. Like you can build relationships, but sometimes like when things get bumpy, you have a lot of difficulty figuring out how to patch things up. And then you spend a lot of time thinking about it, but thinking about it doesn't seem to really fix it. But so then you're like calculating, like you're playing 4D chess and then 5D chess and then 6D chess. And no matter how many layers of thinking about it you do, it doesn't seem to really help. Is that pretty accurate?
I guess so, yeah. I just like the phrase 4D chess. It's kind of accurate.
Yeah, right. Because and so I think a lot. So here's what I'd say, Clara. So first of all, I don't think you're hopeless. Second of all, I think it's worthwhile. I didn't catch what you said earlier, but I think it's worthwhile getting a clinical evaluation about whether you're on the spectrum or whether it is trauma or things like that, because irrespective of which one of those things it is, both of those things can impact relationships. And one of the things that I find the most difficult is that if you do have some kind of diagnosis at play, what I find is that people are absolutely Herculean with the amount of effort and energy that they put in. But if there's something like autism or trauma or depression or something like that in the way, then like you're just kind of like you're driving a car with a flat tire, if that kind of makes sense. I'm not saying you are autistic or that you have trauma or anything like that. Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's really applicable to me so much anymore. Like, I'm trying to live my life as if I'm a normal person and navigating things by just talking about what I need instead of labeling it as anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you're a normal person, and I think vocalizing what your needs are sounds like a very, very good thing to do. And it also sounds like, based on, my first question, which is like, how are your friendships now? It sounds like they're pretty good. Are you pretty happy with them?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I would kind of go back to is that, when you run into conflict with someone, I would steer clear of some of the I statements and also try to understand people's perspectives a little bit better, as opposed to explaining your own. What do you think about that?
I'm sorry, I'm still very skeptical.
Good, right? So what makes you skeptical? Because it hasn't worked in the past.
Yeah.
And can you help me understand how you've tried to understand their perspective?
I'm sorry, my rabbit makes
That's
noise
okay.
in the background. So, well, I mean,
That's rabbit noise is fine.
okay. She's so noisy. Okay. How did I try to understand people in the past? Well, I mean, I usually use all of the like psychology knowledge that I kind of have gleaned over the years.
Clara, do
And
you want to understand other people?
yeah, that's kind of the question, isn't it?
I guess so.
I think I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Okay. So
So
this is completely
sorry.
different. No. This is very, very helpful. Okay. So now the issue is that so here's what I'm noticing. Okay. You let me know if this is wrong. All right. So you have a conflict with someone, and when your friend like opens up, your bad friend, you don't care about me. Do you want to understand her? No. Right?
No, because I just don't think that it's true.
Okay. So this is
I
really
don't
important,
know.
right? So like if you're using psychology techniques and like, so here's what you're really, I commend you, Clara, for putting in so much effort for something that is not in your heart. Like,
I'm laughing.
right? Like, so this is the kind of thing where we can say like, oh, Clara's bad because she doesn't want to repair a friendship. But let's acknowledge for a moment how frustrating it is if you've been friends with someone for years and you're like, hey, like, I think I could be autistic. And your friend is like, hey, I think I could be autistic. And you're like, hey, by the way, like, I've done some searching and stuff. I don't think I'm autistic anymore. And she's like, how dare you? And then you're like, okay, well, this isn't good, right? Because I should be friends with this person. And like, oh my God. Okay, so like, clearly something is wrong here. Let me do some research. Let me go to Google School of Communication and learn psychology techniques and like communicate with people. But I think what's going on here is that you can use all the techniques that you want to, but if your heart ain't in it, people are going to figure it out. And this is the kind of thing where I think it actually kind of starts with you. In terms of, my guess is that sometimes people say things that catch you really off guard and you think that they're really, really unfair. And the hurt of that, right? And this is what happens when people like, this isn't just you, but like if someone just shows up and is like, hey, by the way, you're a complete ass. And then I'm like, no, I'm not. Screw you, right? I don't want to understand there, because especially with criticism, like we don't want to understand and ask a lot of questions like about how we're a bad person and how we're like, you know, like we don't want to understand that perspective. But
I've been trying to understand that perspective for the past 8 months.
Do you want to though? I completely agree. You're trying. Remember, you get an A+ for effort.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't really think I think it's a bit of a dead end. Like, okay, can I say this?
I hope so.
It comes back to the transactional friendships thing.
Okay.
Because
Tell me about that.
like, at least, yeah, this is terrible. Um, in terms of like energy, you know, if you have a bunch of friends who are more or less okay with you being the way that you are, and then you have like one friend who isn't, like what choice are you gonna make?
In terms of like bending over backwards to maintain that friendship?
Yeah, bending over backwards to maintain the one friendship versus taking the chance of just that things will be all right without them. You know?
Yeah, I mean, do you feel guilty for doing that? Let me ask you a different question. Should
Sorry.
you feel
Well,
guilty?
no, I'm just remembering. Sorry.
You know, go ahead.
I'm
Sorry.
just remembering that she said that she was done with me, so I wasn't actually the one that broke up, technically.
Okay.
But I definitely did want to leave. That was an issue. It was like she desperately didn't want me to leave, but I kind of I don't know.
Yeah, this sounds kind of confusing, but let me share this. So
It is confusing.
Sometimes, so this is actually really a good point. So sometimes we have historical friendships, right? And as we grow and change, those historical friendships are no longer like worth kind of preserving. And I think sometimes that's the case. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't know. I just don't know when you make that determination totally, but I mean, yeah, I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, so I think that what I'm hearing from you, Clara, is actually a lot of confidence in how you feel about the situation, but almost a reluctance to vocalize it.
Definitely.
And my guess is that you're concerned about the perception because, you know, so like this is a problem that oh my God, it's like your friend from high school and y'all have been so close for so long. And then she blows up at you one day and you're like, yeah, I'm done with this shit. But that's not what a good friend does. A good friend like listens and tries to understand their perspective and tries to patch up the friendship because the friendship that you have is so strong. And you're like, yeah, I'm done with that shit. Is that how you feel?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I hope that there's people out there that can relate to this. That's kind
Oh.
of my only.
that's why we're talking. I can guarantee you there's tons of people out there. Because here's the thing. No one ever says what you say, which is that this relationship is exhausting now. I've grown. And like, I just don't have the bandwidth for this anymore.
I don't know.
What don't you know? What is that?
Sorry, I have a little bit of a cough. Um, no, sometimes I just say I don't know because I guess it's because I want to say yes, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to.
There it is. Look at that. So here's the thing, okay? Okay, so now we're going to kind of like wrap up and it's going to be pretty simple. First thing is no amount of psychological techniques is going to preserve a friendship that your heart is not in. I can see you nodding emphatically.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
no amount of
I
like, oh, like,
yeah, I
there's,
agree.
right? So like if your heart's not in it, you're like, I'm just done with this, then like at least acknowledge that for yourself. Right? So that's number one. And so I can understand why you're skeptical, because here I'm like, oh, like Clara, try to understand her perspective. And you're like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. And I completely agree with you, because I can give you all the techniques in the world, but if your heart ain't in it, if you actually don't want to understand her perspective, if you're kind of like done with this, then like you're done. Like no amount of techniques is going to fix that. Now, if you're looking for license from me that is okay, I'll give it to you. I'll say, yeah, that's okay.
I mean, you don't have to. I'm
Well,
I'm in charge of myself for the most part.
Sure, but I think I do think that this is like important, because why do you say I don't know? It's because you're not allowed societally to say like this relationship is just not worth the energy anymore, because that makes you a bad person. I don't think it makes you a bad person. I think that's a reality of life that we actually like is happening every single day that we just don't admit. And then we get into situations like this where people are like trying to make a relationship that neither party wants to be a part of work, because I don't want to abandon my friend. Right? And technically she broke up with me. Right? Because you're okay. You're in the clear according to the rules.
I don't like. Yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly I wasn't really expecting that from her though. I don't know.
So
I had apologized to her for my part, and I thought that's what she wanted. But then when I asked her to apologize to me about the thing that she wrote to me, she was done. I'm sorry.
so you sound hurt. You sound pissed.
I'm not allowed to be hurt, Dr. K.
Yeah.
I'm the villain. I'm the villain.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, I mean, if you feel hurt and you feel pissed, right? Like, I do think there's a lot for you to learn from this situation. And at the top of the list is like being aware. I mean, I think you know what you want. I think you just pretend to want something else. And like, that's not good in a relationship. You need authenticity.
Oh, God.
What?
You're so right. Oh.
Now, here's why this is important, because somewhere along the way, you may run into a relationship that you do actually want to preserve. And in that, if you run into that, then at some point you may need to like work on yourself in terms of understanding why you don't want the relationship, especially if it's good for you. So I'm especially thinking about something like a serious romantic relationship. I know we're talking about friendships today, but you know, this is the kind of thing where if you're like invested in a romantic relationship and these kinds of feelings come up for you, I think it's fine to leave your friend from high school in the past. Because that just happens. People like, you're not the same person that you were in high school. And what made y'all friends in high school, y'all have grown into different people. And, you know, people grow out of friendship in the same way that they grow out of romantic relationships. But when a relationship is important to you, the one thing that I'd sort of say is that you be really like careful about not convincing yourself that it's no longer important. And at the end of the day, just really be honest with what you want and, you know, kind of who you are. And I'd say that, you know, if you're not happy with the way that your relationships are progressing, if you've been concerned about, this isn't just about you, this is just in general for people, right? If you're concerned that you could have been on the autism spectrum, or that you have social anxiety or trauma-related stuff, attachment-related stuff, I think it's really reasonable to go see a clinician and sort of like get that stuff sort of sorted out. I mean, generally speaking, you know, I heard you kind of say, you know, I want to operate as a normal person. I think you're a normal person, but even if you're autistic, that doesn't make you not a normal person, right? And so it's just something, it's a lever to be pulled if and when you're kind of unhappy with your journey without it, if that kind of makes sense. So by all means, get as far as you can without clinical evaluation. But if at some point you're not happy with things, then get clinical evaluation.
I wanted to say another thing,
Okay.
Vance, because yeah, you said in terms of romantic relationships, and oh, what was it that you have to be honest about what you want. I also am a person who doesn't really want romantic or sexual relationships. I think I'm like a rock.
Okay.
That's also been a big challenge in my life because it was exactly that thing. It was like I got into like a few romantic relationships without realizing that I didn't actually want it in the way that I think it was expected. And I spent so much of my time pretending. I don't know what to do, Dr. K.
Why do you have to
Like,
do anything?
because I have to face the world
So?
and tell the world that I don't want all of these things that normal relational people want. So, but that's another topic.
Yeah, I think I think it's related, but I do think that that's a different chapter. So here's what I'd leave you with. So here's what I'm kind of noticing from you, and you let me know whether this kind of sinks in. So, like, the world expects things from you, Clara. The older the friendship, the more important it is, and the more you should care about it. We were friends since we were 3 years old, and I can't sacrifice that for anything, even if the friend has grown up into a raging narcissist, or you have, right? Who knows? So it's okay for society to have certain expectations of people. I think not living up to those expectations is actually okay. Like, I don't think that your value as a human being increases or decreases if you decide that you're just not interested in romance or you're asexual or whatever, you know, you do you. I think the fault lies and the hurt comes from pretending and letting someone else be a part of that fiction.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely. Yeah.
So I think that's where, like, if you want to hold some kind of accountability or, like, you know, you don't have to tell the world. I mean, it's not like you have to walk around with a shirt that says I'm not interested in relationships. And that's
Yeah.
like, you know, like, you could be not in a romantic relationship for the rest of your life, and you'll probably have to explain it to someone here or there. But, you know, it's not like most people are just off living their lives.
Yeah.
And so I'd say
That's
be
true.
honest with yourself, first of all. And even, like, if you're concerned about the judgment of the world, like, you know, that's understandable, right? Because there are certain expectations and people will judge you and stuff like that. But that's where the more centered you are. I mean, I think your problem actually arises not from telling the world your truth. I think your problem arises from pretending it isn't your truth and then trying to play the game of the world and being inauthentic with yourself. And then it causes problems because your heart isn't in it. And then you're, like, trying to satisfy the world's expectations. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
to sum it up, you do you, girl. And I'm
I
assuming
guess
that
so.
you have female pronouns here, but, you know.
It's fine. I don't really care that much.
How
Okay.
how does it sound to hear that? I mean, how does it feel to hear that?
I kind of don't really feel anything. Like, I don't
Okay.
feel relief and I don't feel, yeah,
That's okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. Right. So
But
once
I think
again,
you're cool.
yeah. So once again, it's like, oh my God, am I supposed to be feeling relief right now? Oh, I don't. That's
No.
that's fine. You do you. Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's been helpful. And even if it hasn't, that's okay. Like, we tried.
Yeah.
I hope I get the sense that you understand things a little bit better than when we started this conversation. You know, and I think that a lot of people who are listening probably resonated with what you said.
Yeah. Cool.
Any last thoughts or, you know, closing remarks before we wrap up?
No. I think I'm good.
Awesome. Thank you very much for calling in. I think it was really important to hear what you had to share.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. K.
Take care. Bye. Yeah. So that's how it is sometimes. Like, I thought it was good, actually. Right? Because this is the sort of situation where, like, we're supposed to behave a certain way. We're supposed to, like, maintain friendships, and we have, like, all of these, like, you know, we have this, like, social scoring system in terms of what we're supposed to value. And then we run into relationship problems, and then, like, if we're trying to play a game that we don't feel authentic, and I know it's, like, it's kind of weird, but Clara was really great for sharing one really important authentic feeling, which is that I don't think this relationship is worth my time anymore. I don't want to go through the effort of understanding why this person is upset with me. And does that make you an asshole? I don't think so. Like, if it happens over and over and over again, and you're leaving, like, you know, dumpster fire after dumpster fire of relationship, then maybe it is a problem. But I think this is the kind of thing where, honestly, you're going to create more hurt in the world if you try to be something that you're not, as opposed to authentically sort of saying, like, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. I was taken aback by where this is coming from. And, you know, if you're done with the relationship, like, that's totally fine by me. I am too. I've really appreciated the time that we've spent together. Your friendship has meant a lot to me, but I think we've just, seems like we're not really interested in maintaining this, which is totally fine. I'm grateful for the time that we had. I wish you all the best. Adios. And that's okay. Right? And then people will be like, I can't believe that you threw it away. Like, you threw it away. Like, how dare you throw it away? No, it's like, I mean, throw it away. It's sure, if that's what you want to call it, if you want to blame me for it, like, that's okay. But, like, people grow and they change and they form new connections, and you don't have to hold on to the past. Just because something was valuable to you in the past doesn't mean that it has to be valuable to you in the present. We sort of even heard that a little bit in terms of, like, it sounds like there have been some challenges in the past in terms of trying to pretend to be interested in romantic relationships when you're not. So it's okay to be that way. It's okay to want to move on from relationships. It's okay not to be loyal to things that don't really interest you anymore. Right? And as you are authentic with people, I think that too is, like, not going to hurt other people, because if you're sort of straight up with people that, hey, you know, like, this is just who I am and this is what I'm interested in, you kind of give the people the choice to accept it or not accept it. The hurt actually comes when you pretend to be something else. They opt into that relationship, and it turns out that your heart really isn't in it, and then you're practicing all these psychological techniques to try to keep them happy when you actually don't care about them in the first place. Right? All right, let's move on. Okay. Hello?
Hello?
Hey, friend.
Hi there.
What do you go by?
So my name is Robert.
Roger?
Robert.
Robert?
Yeah, Robert.
Okay. Welcome, Robert. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you.
How are your friendships going?
So my friendships have been, I'm talking in the past tense, I don't really have any friendships at the moment, but my friendships have always felt codependent
Okay.
to me. So I don't know how, I've got like maybe 5 minutes worth of stuff that I will sort of read out. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you so much for preparing.
Okay. So I'm going to start off by saying that I was diagnosed as autistic, I think, when I was 3.
Okay.
And so when I was in school, so secondary school, 11 to 16, I wasn't able to mask my symptoms as well. So people would make fun of me for being weird. Like I was instantly weird to people. And so naturally, because of this, I sort of fell into like the nerd group of my school. And so I
Naturally.
remember, yeah. And so I remember early on, I had this quite an awkward encounter. I think it was with a girl. I just said something dumb, and my friend like asked me, why am I so awkward around people? And I told him about my diagnosis, and so I remember regretting that day quite a lot because as soon as I told him, I gave him this you know, I gave him this buzzword basically, and so from then on, like all throughout school, that word was used to describe me like constantly. Um, and so in my group, there were, I would say, 3 people who were a lot smarter than I was. Uh, and I was one of the 4 that weren't very intelligent. I was educationally quite mediocre, so I could never really join in on any intelligent discussion whatsoever. However, the only reason I had any value in this group was because I could make people laugh. Like that was like my place that I held in the group. Um, and I found I mean sometimes I could say things that were humorous, but there were times where I would say something or I would just do something. I would say something outrageous or do something outrageous, and you know people would laugh at me rather than with me.
Common.
Yeah. So in fact I think it happened more that people were laughing at me than with me, now I think of it.
Yeah.
So I realized that the only way I could get a positive response out of my friends was to just make them I didn't have any place in this group other than my ability to make them laugh. And I would sort of I knew that they knew I was autistic, so I would I would play it up a little bit. There were times where I would pretend to be completely oblivious to certain things, and in turn that would sort of gain a reaction out of them, like, oh, look at him, he's the funny sped kid, he doesn't know,
Yep.
and so I sort of created almost a character out of myself rather than
Yeah.
displaying who I was. And overall, I'd say I had one other group of friends who were, I would say, more malicious. In fact, it was mostly only one person. The other group I'm on good terms now with, we're okay. But there was another group of people that I joined through someone that I had known from when I was young. It's like we grew up together, lived on the same street, and he knew about my diagnosis because his mother had told him, just for the sake of awareness. And
Yeah.
when we were kids, it was we're just childhood friends, it doesn't matter. But I remember we reconnected later on, sort of in our secondary school years, started playing CSGO together, and he played CSGO with his school friends, and so he introduced me to them. And the first time he introduced me to his friendship group, he introduced me as, oh, this is the autistic guy that I was telling you about. And he didn't even introduce me by name. I had to say it myself. But he introduced me as this label right off the bat. But I still managed to do my usual thing. I was able to fit in with this group. I came in with my brand of loud and obnoxious humor and managed to get laughs out of them. So I knew that I was able to fit in at the very least. And I remember the first time that I met his friends in person, they were kind of I don't know what it was, but they were hesitant around me. And I wondered why. I just introduced myself, but they sort of they were kind of weirded out by me, right off the bat. And later on, his friend had told me that this guy had said, oh, you need to watch out around him. He's severely autistic and he might throw his arm out and accidentally hit you. And he it was sort of said as a joke, he was trying to build this character of me, basically, rather than letting his friends meet me normally. And so I was always introduced as the autistic guy. I was never Robert. I was always his autistic friend. That's how people referred to me as. And, you know, I was able to still like fit in to a degree, but I was never really respected as a person. I was just kind of this like sideshow freak on the, you know,
Sure.
that's how I felt. And eventually it got to the point where I understood that I was sort of a lightning rod for all of the jokes.
Damn,
Um,
what a phrase, dude. That's such
yeah.
a powerful phrase.
I heard the phrase "stop being autistic" a lot. Like if I ever said something that was like against what they were saying, that was what was thrown at me just by default. If I ever tried to stand up for myself, I wouldn't ever be taken seriously because I was just the funny guy. That's all I was. And because this word was being used to describe me so much, it became synonymous with my very existence. Like once I left school, and I entered college, I really started to, like college is high school, 16 to 18. And I really struggled to adjust. Like I couldn't make any friends whatsoever. Like I felt really, really awkward around people because I thought that I just like emanated autism. Like they could just detect it just by standing near me. And you know, that doesn't really make sense, right? But because I've been caught, like I'd become so attached to this word, and I felt like I never understood really what I was being made fun of for, but I was being made fun of for something. So I thought, you know, I don't. People can just see it, but I can't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so yeah, I didn't make any friends in my last years of education, and you know, ever since I've just been like I've been 3 years out of education, just working various different jobs. And I've sort of realized how it's affected me, like in my working life, because and just like my ability to make friends in general. Like I've been around some people in work who are like my age, and I could have made friends with, but I didn't want to I didn't want to like do the same thing as I did with all of my other friends and like try to be outgoing. And so I would, you know, I was always worried that they could like anyone that talks to me can detect it, like they know, like they can pick up on like
Yep.
my awkwardness. So I basically tried to pretend to be as normal as possible. Uh, and in turn, it would make me seem really boring, really unemotional. Like I wouldn't show any personality basically, because I was worried that if I do show any amount of personality, then it will be made fun of.
Yeah, absolutely, man. My heart goes out to you.
I've only got a little bit left to read. But yeah, I feel like every single, like I want to expand socially. I want to actually learn what a good friendship feels like. But I feel like this is going to get in the way because whenever I talk to people, I have this like feeling of just, I feel like I can't be myself at all. Like I have to put on, you know,
Sure.
this completely normal appearance. I can't, you know, and I end up being, yeah, I've already gone over this. Sorry, I'm worried that because I have this anxiety of my autism being found out and people finding out that there's something wrong with me, I try to be as normal as possible, and in turn that makes me seem weird in itself,
Yep.
and I just don't make friends.
Artificial.
Yeah,
Rigid.
exactly. Yeah.
Robert, you had mentioned something about codependence.
So now I think of it, yeah. So I use that word because the friendship group that I was talking about that I joined through my childhood friend. They were like seen as sort of like popular kids, basically. And for me, being in this friendship group, I felt like I was finally not a nerd anymore, basically. And so if I left this group, I'd have nothing. I'd have to be a nerd again.
Yeah.
So, and it always felt like they were above me. I was below them, and I was always playing up to them just to stay in.
Got it. Can I just think for a second?
Sure.
Thank you very much for sharing things so concisely. I think it's actually very helpful and was also quite rich in terms of your experience and your background and your information. So I'd love to just process for a moment and kind of formulate my thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah. So Robert, is it okay if I try to respond in a more almost like you kind of gave me 5 minutes? Is it okay if I kind of try to do the same back to you, and then we can
Sure.
maybe dig in a little bit more?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, first of all, my heart really goes out to you. I think you've been the unhappy recipient of so much of the struggle that we see with people who are on the spectrum. So the first thing is that there's just a lack of awareness about what autism is. And so, like even for example, like your friend's mom that told him that you were on the autism spectrum, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I think having awareness of people's neurodivergent differences can actually be like a really important piece of information in helping us form appropriate relationships. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not like we want to hide it, like we want people to be kind of aware, but I think the downside is that when we start to tell people, sometimes what happens is the autism starts to be our defining characteristic.
Yeah.
And once it starts to become the defining characteristic, I've seen this in a way that I really hadn't seen even 5 years ago, where sometimes groups of people, right, because we're being like more accepting of people with autism, and it's neurodevelopmental, and it's like, it's a little or neurodivergent. And so like I've almost seen people who will have like a token autistic friend. So like groups of people will have like a friend, and it's like, oh, we're cool and we're accepting because we've got one. I'm friends with someone with autism, so that means that I'm a cool person and I'm like accepting of people and I'm woke and all this kind of stuff. But even then, in that moment, they don't have a friend with autism. They have an autistic friend. And this is where sometimes, like, I think you shared that beautifully when you kind of said, like, you got introduced as, oh, here's the autist I found. And they didn't even like introduce your name. And that's where like what's sort of starting to happen is people are starting to be defined by their autism instead of autism being a part of who they are. And this can get like even worse because as you sort of get defined by this one thing, you're left with a very interesting social challenge, which is like, this is like, these people are my friend because like, oh, like I'm autistic. And then what happens is like, you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I relate to these people because they're judging me in this way? And what a lot of people with autism will end up doing, we'll also see this with other neurodivergent kind of conditions, like ADHD is very, very common, where you become the clown, right? Because that's how you get your social status. You may not be as intelligent as them. I'm not entirely sure I agree with that, by the way, but if you say that, we'll accept that for now. But you kind of like, you turn into kind of this one trick pony where like, oh, like, let's all laugh at the autistic kid because at least they're kind of laughing, right? They invite you. Like you're invited, but you're kind of the butt of jokes. And then you're kind of stuck because you're in the situation where even if you try to say something or do something or exhibit frustration with your quote unquote friends, they attribute, oh, they're like, that's just his autism acting out. Like, oh, we don't have to take his like concerns seriously. We don't have to take his feelings seriously. We don't have to take his criticisms seriously. That's just the autism. It's just the autism.
Yeah.
And so it's a very toxic dynamic where you have to like continue paying this price of being the butt of jokes in order to get some degree of social acceptance. And then as you lobby to actually be a part of the group instead of fitting in, like they don't want that, right? Because they treat you, your entire relationship with them is defined by the autism. And so
Yeah.
like we feel kind of stuck by this bullying. It's essentially bullying. And so then what happens, I've seen this a lot where people will like learn from that, right? And they're like, okay, well, here's the way I've learned how to make friends, which is that like people are aware of my autism. It's sort of like demeaning in some ways, but it also is like sort of an excuse. And if I kind of screw up or people get mad at me, like they're still going to invite me next time because I'm autistic. You know, so it does have some advantages. I can poke fun at myself. That's what I bring to people. That's my fundamental value. And I'm going to engage in self-deprecating humor, which is going to encourage disrespect. And we're going to like keep that going because that's how I connect with people. And over time, what happens is people realize like, oh, this is actually kind of toxic. I don't like this. And then you become ashamed of the autism because people have been treating you so poorly because you're autistic. And then you try to suppress parts of yourself. Whereas like, I don't think that you're funny just because you're autistic. It sounds to me like one of your best qualities is that you're actually like really genuinely funny. And so then what happens is we try to hide our autism and we suppress those humorous parts of ourselves. You end up coming across as kind of like flat.
Yes.
Right.
Definitely.
And then like people it's like the thing that the most valuable thing that you can offer to another human being is something that you've taken off the table. Because at the beginning, you used humor as a compensation for other potential deficiencies or autism or whatever. And then you realize like in your mind, those two things have come together. Like you can't be funny without being autistic almost. And then as you take humor off the table because you're taking autism off the table, then like, how do you connect with people? And then you kind of become rigid, you kind of become flat, you kind of become inauthentic. And then it's hard to connect with people when you're just kind of like neutral.
Yeah.
It's like, I gotta say, it's really hard to be in this situation. And this is a situation that I hear about so much from people who are on the spectrum. Does that resonate with you?
That it's, 100%. I mean, every single thing. Definitely. Yeah.
So, and this is what's tough. I don't know that I have an easy answer for you because I think it's like, it's a problem we're seeing that's like more and more, challenging. It's happening more and more. So let me start with a couple of questions. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
So the first is, how do you feel about being autistic?
I'm just going to think for a second. I feel like it's an unnecessary hindrance on my communication. It's that I don't like, there's a lot of, there's this stereotype of an autistic person where they're sort of like gifted in some sort of way, like, Rain Man, if you've ever watched that movie, or he can count cards, whatever. I'm not like good at maths. I'm not good at coding. I'm not really particularly good at anything. I just have the social downsides. That's how I personally feel about it.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good description, because sometimes in the game of life, we almost think about it like, I don't know if you play D&D or like RPGs, but
Not really.
Okay. So like sometimes we have like this character creation kind of perspective where it's like, if I get a negative trait, I get some kind of bonus point somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then it all evens out in the end. Like I can min max by having a really low stat over here, but then I'm super high over here. And unfortunately, sometimes that's not how life works. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes things are just like negative. Like there's no like upside to trauma. Like, right there, so that's challenging. Yeah. So how do you feel about, so you kind of don't feel like you have any kind of advantages. You're not an autistic savant.
No.
And so, but how do you feel about, like, how do you feel about that? Like not having an advantage and just having a straight disadvantage?
I can't really, just bad. I can't really elaborate on it anymore. Like, there's no upside to it.
Yeah. So do you find yourself wishing that you weren't autistic?
All the time.
And are you ashamed of being autistic?
I will say not so much anymore. Like I've been working a lot on dealing with that shame, and I'm not really ashamed of it anymore. The way I see it now is I could do without it, and it probably would have made my life play out a little. Like, it would have made my life easier at that stage of my life, but I'm not ashamed of it necessarily. Like I've sort of worked on that.
So I'm really happy to hear that. I think that's going to be very important for going forward. And so what makes it hard for you to form connections with people now?
I would say this is slowly improving, but I would say for the past 3 years, the only people I've really interacted are people at work. It's the difficulties of like that. There's something so awkward about small talk and just regular passing interactions with people, and that there's a lot of that happens at work. You need to say good morning, like how are you? I'm fine. How are you? You need to ask them the same question, and then they say the same thing back to you. And it like the inauthenticity of all of these interactions, I always feel like disgusting after I engage in any of like I can't do small talk. That's just like one of them. The question was, what do you think stops me from building connections with people? Right?
Yeah. And if it's like, I don't like small talk, that's a completely valid answer.
Yeah. Okay. And the other one, a big part is like eye contact. I can only really make eye contact for like 2 seconds at a time before I have to look away, because obviously, like, you know, you look at like, normal people look at each other. And so over time, I've learned that I have to kind of do that, even though it is difficult. So I'll look at people in the eyes for like 2 seconds, and then I have to look away because it becomes too uncomfortable. And what this means is that people sort of naturally get an impression of me that I'm not really on the same page as they are. Like I'm not listening to them, or I'm not interested in what they're saying. So I think I actually give across like an arrogant vibe. Like if people don't know, they just assume that I'm rude.
And how do you feel about telling people that you're on the spectrum?
I don't. I wouldn't ever do it unless it was the only person. I've only told. I'm not going to count all the people that I've told. It would make me uncomfortable to tell someone unless it was necessary. Like a manager, for instance. I told my manager at my current job that I'm autistic, and if I'm not making eye contact as much, it it feels good to sort of get that weight off my shoulders, that I don't feel like I have to pretend. Like they understand that I've got this thing that might make me seem slightly blunt or standoffish at times, and I've sort of got a reason for it. So I think the fear of telling someone can be quite strong, because I worry about maybe like, oh, will they think that I'm incompetent? Will they fire me? But I think once the most recent case, telling my manager, once I told him, I feel like people at work started to, like when I used to come to work, I would just like come in, not say a word, and I would go home. But now that people sort of understand, they're okay with that, and I actually feel more like a lot more comfortable in my workplace. And so I feel like I have actually started talking more to my coworkers now. So I know the positive effects that telling people can have. It's just getting over that initial hurdle of telling them that scares me.
Yeah. So, Robert, I actually feel like I've got I want to share some more stuff with you. I feel like you actually did such a beautiful job with your initial kind of 5 minutes that I don't feel like I need to ask you a bunch of questions. Is it okay if I share some thoughts with you, or were you hoping that I would ask you more questions?
No, you can share your thoughts. It's fine.
So I'm optimistic for you, first of all. So I think just talking to you now, I think you have a lot to offer people. And I don't know if hopefully you're not watching Twitch chat or anything like that, but
Oh no, definitely not.
Good. And also I think that like what I'm, overwhelmingly seeing is that people think you're a cool person, and, you're worthy of hanging out with and have friendship and all this kind of stuff. Right. So like I'm not hearing an overt rejection from people on Twitch, which I think is great. So,
Yeah.
so I think part of what you're dealing with is the fear that you have is primarily because you are, it sounds like, in two primary situations, also with people who are like kids for the most part, right? And so kids are not going to be the most empathic. In fact, kids are some of the nastiest people on the planet when
Yeah.
it comes to treating people with compassion. Like, kids can be some of the most cruel human beings in the world. And so I think a lot of your fear actually is reasonable, right? Because you've had this experience where people have defined you by autism, have treated you a particular way because of that autism. Some of that was also like played into by you because that was your adaptation to get acceptance, right?
Yeah.
And so going forward, I almost think that you're, what I've actually seen works, and is first of all developing a healthy understanding and relationship with your own autism, and I think you're actually like really far there. So in the past, when I've done therapy with people who have autism, we try to get to kind of where you are, which is that I'm not ashamed of it and it sucks. Like, I wish I didn't have it, and it's okay to authentically wish I wasn't autistic. And also, like, it's just part of who I am, and I don't need to be ashamed of it. Like, you're completely valid with all of those thoughts. The other thing that I'd kind of say is there is some, we talked about the downsides of increasing autism awareness, which is that sometimes you'll have social groups that want a token autistic friend. But the upside is that there are a lot of people out there who are more aware that, autism is more common than we originally thought. It's a spectrum, and that will be actually like more understanding of your situation and try to understand you better, and will like recognize that if you're not making eye contact, if you struggle with small talk, they won't attribute that to other things kind of unfairly, right? Like, you're kind of like, you're uninterested or you're arrogant or whatever, like you kind of said. So oddly enough, in your case, I would actually say just like keep trying to connect with people. And also, you don't want to lead necessarily with, hi, my name is Robert, I'm on the spectrum. But also, like, I wouldn't, if you feel like, especially with small talk, I think you can kind of like share that tidbit a little bit earlier. And I wouldn't be surprised. I'm so happy to hear about kind of your situation at work, because what I've actually found is that, if you kind of put that out there and you kind of put yourself out there, and I would include like activating your humor too, that if you try that with 5 or 6 different groups of people, it'll land really well with like 50% of them. And I think to a certain degree, it's kind of a numbers game, because as people are more, compassionate towards people who are neurodivergent, that actually like opens a lot of doors. And also that like, if they kind of understand that, oh, the reason that you're not making eye contact isn't because you dislike me, it's maybe a manifestation of being on the autism spectrum. Like, that will allow relationships to foster, and hopefully you'll actually find situations more like you did at work. I'm actually really hopeful, because you've at least had a couple, right? And so oddly enough, I think forming relationships with you is really sort of like acknowledging that fear, acknowledging where that fear comes from, and also not letting the fear control you, and kind of taking a chance, being a little bit funny, and also like not hiding the fact, I wouldn't advertise it, but also not being ashamed of and not hiding the fact that you're on the spectrum. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I think, I don't want to be someone who makes it. I don't want to sort of like wear autism as a badge and sort of like show it around. But at the same time, I think, when necessary, when it makes sense to tell people, then I will. And I think I'm a lot more comfortable with doing that now.
Yeah, I'm actually just talking to you and having this interaction makes me like quite optimistic that, it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road. And I think you're probably looking at some amount of rejection, but also that rejection is not something that I think is like, this is the hard thing, is sometimes it's hard to acknowledge that if a group rejects us, it's not like we're personally deficient, right? And even then, it may not be like a straight rejection. It's just like, if you ask, hey, like, you want to hang out sometime? Yeah, sure, I'd love to. And then nothing ever happens. Doesn't mean that I don't like you. It just means that maybe I'm busy, or maybe I'm struggling with my own depression, or, You know, like there's a lot of family drama going on or things like that. And I think that's where it's like just important to remember that to a certain degree, it's like kind of a numbers game. That if you reach out and try to connect with 5 different groups of people, you know, 2 to 3 of them will probably like not land. But all you really need is like 1 or 2. And then I think you've really come a long way. And I'm optimistic that if you just keep on trying, you'll actually do really well.
Yeah.
How does that sound to you?
I mean the rejection part, like obviously I have quite a negative relation. Well, I think everyone does. Nobody wants to be rejected. But yeah, getting over that sort of, oh, everyone hates me if these people hate me. That will be the most difficult part. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I like I said, it's going to be a bumpy road. I think this is the kind of thing where actually like seeing a therapist could also help you with that kind of stuff. In terms
I am currently seeing a therapist.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I would take that, you know, those rejections, I would take them to therapy and kind of vent them there. I'm not surprised at all to hear that you're seeing a therapist because it sounds like you've really come a long way and you're, you know, doing really well. The one thing that I would remember is that sometimes this can be a feature of being on the spectrum, but it is not exclusive to being on the spectrum. So a lot of neurotypical people will do this. Like, you know, that rejection is sometimes a manifestation of black and white thinking.
Yeah.
And just be aware of that, right? So black and white thinking is not specific to autism spectrum, but I tend to see it happen more in people with autism. And so some of the stuff like, oh, the only thing I bring to the table is self-deprecating humor, that kind of black and white thinking I would start to really become aware of and question a little bit. Because I think you bring a lot. I mean, just talking to you now, like, I feel like I would have no trouble hanging out with you for like 2 or 3 hours and just, you know, and you haven't cracked any jokes. Like, you're insightful, you're thoughtful, you know, you're organized with your speech. You're self-aware, like you bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, but like you know, with the way that I'm interacting with you currently, it's very formal. Like I'm not interacting with you in a bubbly, energetic way. Like you know, I'm just saying words. That's all I'm doing, and I want to get past that like exterior that I've built for myself. And you know,
you mean it, Robert? You mean it gets better than this?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is just very. I feel like you feel like you're talking. I feel like you might feel like you're talking to a robot right now because of the sort of.
I don't feel like I'm talking to a robot.
Well, that's how I always feel when I talk to people because I feel like because I'm not emotive and I'm not energetic like other people are. They get the impression that I'm like. And yeah, I don't know. So I'll just take what you said. Like, thank you.
So like it's important to acknowledge that, right? Like, but
yeah.
That's the whole point. Is that a lot of you forming friendships is going to be not negotiating against yourself.
Could you elaborate?
Yeah. So like you know you're pre-rejecting yourself. You're not even giving me the chance to accept or reject you. You're assuming that I think I'm talking to a robot.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way at all.
Yeah, I was the only one who said it. So.
Yeah, like you don't seem like a robot to me.
That's great to hear.
That's why, honestly, my reaction when you told me like I'm not being bubbly and energetic is like, this is great. You're telling me it gets better than this? Like that sounds awesome. You know, and that's what I think I'm hearing from you, Robert, is that you're not showcasing your best self. I think the big difference is that even your best self is actually completely acceptable. I mean, even not being your best self is completely acceptable and sounds fantastic. I just feel like I'm talking to a normal, open, thoughtful person. That's what I get from this conversation.
Okay. I don't think I've ever been told that before. But it's good to hear that outside perspective.
I'm not getting any of the sense that you're funny, but I would say the word that comes to mind the most is that you're thoughtful.
Yeah.
And if it gets better than that, it's like give me the DLC, bro. You know, like don't paywall the humor.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any questions?
I would like to think
Sure.
just for a second. So. Okay, I think a big one for me is eye contact, and like how much of it is it something that can be worked on? Like, can I learn to make more eye contact?
This is where the answer is going to be kind of strange. The answer is going to be yes and no. So if you look at, I'm not an expert on autism in terms of my clinical practice, but I think that so if you look at like evidence-based psychotherapies and what's effective for people who are on the spectrum, there is a certain amount of like social skills training that can improve your ability to like relate to other people.
Yeah.
And you can sort of socially train it, but it may never be at the level of like natural eye contact if your brain was a little bit different.
Okay.
So hopefully, I mean, I'd love it if someone proved me wrong, but what we understand about people who are neurodivergent is that their brains are a little bit different. You can compensate for a lot of it. What I will tell you is that at some point it becomes completely irrelevant. So like you may have difficulty with eye contact, or it may feel a little bit artificial. It's kind of hard. This has been my experience working with people on the spectrum, is that it's hard to like find a natural level, right? So you learn how to make more eye contact, but then it can feel like you're staring a little bit too much, and that can make people some people uncomfortable. And the truth of the matter is that for some people that I've worked with, they never get to the neurotypical level. And it's actually kind of irrelevant because it feels awkward for the first hour that you're with people. But I've worked with a ton of people who never master eye contact, who are still able to live completely fulfilling social and romantic lives. Because at some point, like a lot of that eye contact is actually with the initial social interaction. And I don't know how to say this, but I'm assuming that you've got relationships with your family, but like, do you have eye contact problems with your family?
It's not as bad. It's not as bad, but that like I can't look. There's still that thing where I can't look for too long. It just gets uncomfortable.
Right. So like you may continue to have it. My point is that it may not impact the relationship.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I have been told that eye contact is huge when it comes to connecting with people. But
yeah, but I think it's more important early on. Right. And what I've seen is that people like can form relationships, and then it's totally fine. Like if you go to movies, like if you go to the movies with a couple of friends, no one's making eye contact anyway. So it's not really an issue. And if you go to a meal, it's not like everyone's staring at each other for extended periods of time. And so it's okay. Like if you go on a hike with someone, for example, like you're going to be walking side by side. You're not even going to be looking at each other. So as you develop relationships with people, I think eye contact becomes less of a hindrance in terms of the relationship.
Okay.
But I have worked with people who continue to struggle with it and never really master it fully, which is unfortunate, but also doesn't determine your future.
Yeah. And am I good to ask one more question?
Sure.
So I have worked in places in the past where I feel like due to, not being so, due to being autistic, and well, people aren't ever really aware that I'm autistic. They just think that I'm off or rude, as I've said before. And I'm worried as to how, what am I trying to say? Like how much importance, like, is it common for autistic people to be fired from their job because of things that they give off to people?
That's such a good question. I actually don't. So I imagine that there's probably research about that, but I don't know the statistics. I don't know is the short answer.
Okay.
let me think about how I can try to offer something a little bit more substantive. So I would find it hard to believe that I would imagine that being on the spectrum makes social interactions at work a little bit more challenging. And I would also expect that challenging social interactions at work don't correlate well with employment and things like that.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not using an and here, I'm really using a but. There are lots of other people and lots of other conditions that lead to problematic social interactions that have nothing to do with autism, right? Like, so people can be narcissistic, they can be passive aggressive. And the other thing that I'd say is that I know a ton of people who are very successfully employed who are on the spectrum.
Okay.
And, you know, like, so I think it may be a disadvantage of some kind, but I think it's far from destiny. And I think it's also far from like insurmountable.
Yeah. It's just a case of finding the right company.
Yeah.
Some
and
companies
also
might
like,
have more of an issue somewhere.
yeah. So like also vocalizing to people when you're ready that you are on the spectrum and that it affects things in a particular way. But like, you know, sharing with your boss that, hey, I'm on the spectrum. These are the things that I struggle with. But like, you know, anytime I'm open to feedback, I'm a very hard worker, and here are the ways that I try to compensate. You know, if this ever becomes a problem, please let me know, and I'm happy to work on it. Like, even vocalizing things like that can actually set you above your peers, because a lot of neurotypical people will never say stuff like that, and they'll be oblivious to feedback and take things personally and things like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you feel like autism is a disadvantage, I'm not going to disagree with you. You're the one who lives your life. And at the same time, I don't think that it dooms you to anything. And the person that I feel like I'm talking to who's this thoughtful and proactive about their life, I'm optimistic that you can have a good job, good career, and you can form solid human connections.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. I think you've put in a lot of work, Robert, and I think it shows.
Okay, I mean, is there anything else, or?
Not from my end.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Been great.
Thanks for sharing, and thanks for calling in.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
See ya.
Oh, Inferno Pizza wants to be his friend real bad. Yeah, so I think, you know, I just want to kind of recap this for a second. So sometimes we're becoming more aware that people are on the autism spectrum. So a couple of things to remember. The first is that the autism spectrum is a spectrum. And so there's, you know, you can't define the destinies of people on the autism spectrum in one particular way, because different people have different advantages, disadvantages, etc. I think, unfortunately, what we're starting to see is that on the one hand, it's good that there's more autism awareness, right? So people like Robert is in a workplace where he explained this to his boss. Boss was very understanding. You know, so it sounds like he's feeling more comfortable at work. So I think it's totally fine to share with people if you are on the spectrum. A weird thing that I'm starting to see, though, is that sometimes it starts to define you in a social group, which can actually be quite toxic, where everything that you do is because you're autistic, right? It's like we don't sometimes allow people with autism to have normal variation. And just because I'm mad at you doesn't mean that like I'm autistic and can't regulate my emotions. It's possible the reason that I'm mad at you is because you're actually treating me inappropriately and with disrespect. So sometimes we'll see a lot of invalidation towards people on the spectrum. And sometimes we'll also see a weird kind of toxic thing, which is like the token autistic friend in a friend group, which, as Robert said, can sometimes make you a lightning rod for jokes. And so the challenge is, if you grow up on the spectrum, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on the autism spectrum, I've seen this with other things like ADHD as well, where you sort of learn that humor and self-deprecating humor is the way that you get admission to a friend group. But if that's what starts to happen, like, you know, you're paying a poor admission price and you're not truly being accepted. So if you're struggling to form connections, I think a lot of it is actually disentangling some of the self-deprecating humor and things like that, like sort of trying to find a nice balance with accepting that you are autistic, accepting that there may not be a particular advantage, if, you know, not to say that it's all bad, right? So people with autism are allowed to say this is not a disadvantage. They're allowed to say this is a disadvantage. Like, that depends on the individual. We don't get to decide that for people with autism. You have to develop your own relationship and comfort and acceptance with your neurodivergence. And once you do that, hopefully you're not ashamed of it, right? So I think overcoming that shame is really important. And then as you start to form connections with people, thankfully there is more awareness. And sometimes you have to let people know that you're on the spectrum to help them understand why you may not be doing some things that neurotypical people do. But in my experience, people who sort of take this approach and overcome some of their fears and don't like slip into automatic self-deprecating humor, because that attracts for a particular kind of person, they are able actually to form social connections, romantic relationships, be successful at work. So don't give up hope. It just takes a little bit of work. We've got time for one more. Hello. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, friend.
Hi. I'm Ginkgo.
Nice to meet you, Ginkgo.
Yeah, I was thinking I put on cam as well, like the other people did.
Okay,
for
sure.
Connection.
So once again, since we haven't sort of set that frame properly, we're not going to show your face on stream. We'll sort of sort that out for next time, though. So tell me, Ginkgo, welcome. Thanks. I don't see your face, and now it's tilted. And now I'm not hearing anything. No, let me just.
Oh, that's because I put myself on push to talk.
Okay, there we go.
I wanted everything to go well with the audio.
So I'm seeing. Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much. So can you tell me a little bit, how are your friendships?
So I'd say they're good,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a catch,
Okay.
obviously. That's what I'm here. They're very much lacking, like, proximity, of course. I don't leave my house, they don't leave their house, or they're online friends. And then I just don't know what to do with them. I don't know what I want from them, or the concept of friendship. I want closeness, but I am not vulnerable with them. Maybe I could do stuff with them like hobbies, but I don't do a lot of hobbies these days. And then all I have left are calls and texts, and those don't really hit the same.
Sure.
So I guess I have people I like who like me, but I still feel very lonely.
That sounds tough. Yeah. I mean, I think the whole point of having people that like you and you liking people is that it's supposed to help with the loneliness, right?
I would hope so.
I'm sorry that you feel that way, Ginkgo. It sounds tough. Can you tell me a little bit more about, when you say lacking proximity, do you have friends that are sort of geographically near you and y'all just don't leave the house, or are most of you? Okay.
I have friends that they're basically from high school, and we just maintain our own Discord. A couple of them I still play games with. But our hangouts are very, very rare. And I don't see any of them individually
Okay.
at all.
And are y'all able to geographically meet, or is that is there a geographical barrier there?
I live in car-centric America, and it seems a lot of us can't drive. So that's a barrier right there, transportation.
Okay. When you say a lot of us can't drive, help me understand that statement a little. So let me
My friend group.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to figure out here is whether. So Ginkgo, here's where my questions are coming from. So sometimes there's a very real geographical or physical barrier to meeting in person. And then what keeps people from meeting in person is a little bit more internal, maybe related to vulnerability or anxiety or something like that. But if there's a real geographical barrier, that necessitates a different approach. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm just trying. That's why I'm asking questions about driving and stuff like that. So and when you say a lot of us can't drive, is that the kind of thing where even if you were able to drive, would you have access to a car, or would you not even have access to a car? So there's like no point in being able to drive.
I would have access to a car, probably. Current vehicle that my family owns is not doing too well. Engine
Okay.
needs to be entirely replaced. So I guess not. Proximity, geographical limitations are definitely getting in the way of that.
Yeah. And so that sounds really hard, right? If you're in in sort of like a resource restricted situation, because I think sometimes when we talk about making friends and forming relationships, we kind of assume that people can get from point A to point B, and we're kind of focusing on anxiety and things like that. Whereas the truth of the matter is that sometimes it's actually really hard, like physically. So that sounds tough. I mean, do you think that that is a solvable problem in some way, or is that basically like not solvable in your friend group?
I'm working on it. I've got a permit. I just need to practice the driving, and part of why I intend to move on campus soon, because I'm going to college, is I'll have buses, I'll have a roommate, I'll have people around me who I can just walk to and see, and hopefully I can like pay for somebody out there to teach me how to drive and offer us a car. So I think that can be worked around. At the moment, I'm basically entirely isolated and out of practice with human beings.
Okay. So first thing, I want to commend you for setting up a plan to overcome the geographical barriers. Like that's actually not to be underestimated. That's huge. Like strong work there. And it also sounds like you feel difficult. It sounds like it's difficult to be vulnerable with other people, and you feel rusty socially.
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, in high school, I didn't have any issues. I mean, I would say there were some issues. I put on a mask in front of people, but at least I could see them every day. And I had friendships. I had people who I could call friends, and now I I don't know if I can reasonably call. No, they're my friends. They're my friends. They're good to me. I'm good to them. We're just not close. Um,
How do you think that happened? What changed? How did y'all drift apart?
I was never close to them. I just didn't know it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I growing up, I never had people come and hang out, and back then they could they could just go on my bus with me, or our parents could meet up and have us hang out. And I don't know, every day I'd go home, go back to my little cave, my room, and I would just like be there. Um, I I'm not gonna drag too many clinical or diagnoses in here, but definitely got some avoidant attachment up in here. I just feel very avoidant towards people. Like the idea of inviting them over, like, no, this is my house. You can't come in my house. This is my space. You can't come in my room or my house. And if I go over to them, it's like now I'm in their environment, and I can't easily leave.
Okay. So I'm hearing almost like an internal conflict of sorts where you don't feel safe having them in your space, and yet you feel lonely. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I don't want to argue that it's safety. I mean, they're safe to be around, but I have a lot of conflicts with this whole issue of my friendships because I want to be closer to them, but I don't want to do anything that gets me closer to them.
What gets in, what makes you not want to do anything that makes you closer to them? Help me understand that.
Let me think for a second.
Oh no.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it. I was kidding.
I I don't know how. I don't know what I'm doing. Or how to talk to people. I can talk to people. I'm talking right now. But uh, I can talk about things I like. I can talk about my interests. I can talk about the fact that I spent 2 days doing a complete password overhaul and making a new email and learning about security and password cracking. But can I do anything with, hey, how are you? Not really. I don't really know where to go from there. I don't know how to talk to people unless I have something I know I want to talk about, something I'm really interested to talk about. And I don't feel comfortable just dropping in their DMs, just ranting and rambling about whatever fixation I've got today.
Okay. Couple of questions, Ginkgo. So when you were growing up, did your parents like arrange play dates and stuff for you or your family?
My mom, bless her heart, she does try her best. She's very absent though. Not on purpose, but she didn't really raise me very much. That was my nana's job. It ended up being. So I wouldn't say she really did anything in that regards, helping me socialize. In fact, she didn't really socialize herself. She was just in the house on the couch all day. And then she would tell me, hey, go out, go make some friends, go join some clubs, but wasn't really setting that example herself.
Okay. So I'm hearing that you don't feel, and please let me know if this word is inappropriate or harsh, but you don't feel competence in social situations. Like you don't know how to form a relationship with people. Like a deep
Yeah,
relationship.
I would say that's the most accurate thing because a lot of I guess when I look up things and even some of your videos, it's it can be the conversations, but I don't know about the relationship. Like I can have a conversation with people and they can like me and I can like them, but can I maintain a relationship with them? Not at all.
Okay. So let me ask you something, Ginkgo. Whose fault is that?
I
Chat
this
can't see
feels
your
like a
face.
trick question.
Chat can't see your face, but they can hear your sigh.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
No. I mean, there have been times when I've blamed myself. Um, there have been times when I've blamed my mom. Like, why couldn't she have been there for me? Why couldn't she have um left me in a place where I feel secure and could be emotionally vulnerable with people? And then sometimes I'm like, why can't society be better?
Yeah.
Why can't they be better to me? So I don't know. I've blamed everybody,
Okay.
including myself.
So I noticed that when I asked you that question, I can see more emotion in your face. Do you know what you're feeling right now?
No.
Are you feeling stuff? Close your eyes for a second. Like pay attention to your like physical sensations. Like, are you feeling stuff right now? And if the answer is no, that's okay. You notice anything?
I feel a little jittery,
Okay.
a little aware and alert,
Okay.
and a little nervous, I guess.
Okay. So let's ask the question in a. So I think it's your answer was like a really good one because you over time have worked on this issue, right? At times you blame yourself, at times you blame your mom, at times you blame society. It's society's fault. So let me ask you a different question. So let's move away from blame and fault for a second. Why do you think it is that you don't know how to form relationships?
I've been dealt a shitty hand. Okay, the cards are not in my favor. Too many factors have led to where I currently am today, and some of those factors are me, though I'm barely an adult. So I guess the majority of my life has been due to others. Some of those factors are who I was born to. Um, Others of those factors are I live in a time period where a lot of people don't know how to talk to each other,
Yep.
and a lot of people don't go outside.
Yep. Okay. Well said. So let me ask you something. When you think about connecting with someone, do you feel some sense of like shame at not knowing how to do that?
Huh. I'm not sure if I recognize it as shame.
What does it feel like to you?
I'm disappointed at my ineptitude, and at the same time, I don't want to have to put up with this to begin with. I wish I could just do the thing. Wish I knew how to do the thing. And I wish doing the thing was actually pleasant enough to warrant learning how to do the thing.
Beautifully said, Ginkgo. So I think you said in a much richer way what I would call shame, right? So like it's an inadequacy, and it's not your fault, but it's still like, why can't I know how to do this? Like, it's so frustrating. You're frustrated with yourself, right? Even though you acknowledge, and this is what I think is actually a really awesome strength of yours, is that I think cognitively up here, you kind of know that this isn't your fault, right? Because it sounds like you're on the younger side, like you haven't really had the capacity for self-determination in your life, right? Most of your life has been like, you're still in your starting zone, right? You haven't gotten to the open world part where you get to decide where you go and what you level up and things like that. So like you spawned in the game of life, and your tutorial did not include a whole lot of social skills. So that's really good. And I want you to lean into that part of yourself, because you're going to need that cognitive understanding to help you sort of move forward. Okay? So let's go through a couple of generalities. So the first thing to understand is that, as you've already said, I think we sometimes don't realize how much of social relationship formation comes from modeling our upbringing. So like if our parents don't have friends, like, I don't know how else to say this, like if you're someone who's out there and listening to this and you don't have a whole lot of friends, the first question you should ask yourself is, do your parents have a bunch of friends? When you grew up, did you see how relationships were formed? Did you see your parents go out and meet new people and form friendships with them and invite them over to dinner and then invite them over to birthday parties? Did your parents go out of their way to create social opportunities for you? Because that's what you have to do as a parent, right? You got to take your kid to the playground, and you got to have a birthday party, and you have to order pizza. And like when you're 6, whether kids come over for your birthday party and form a social connection with you has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with what your parents or your family or whatever do for you. And so a lot of people, and then what happens is as we grow into adults and we become aware that we're struggling with this, I don't know how to do this. And it's kind of interesting, because it's sort of like, then your solution is like, okay, I'm going to like learn about it, right? So then you start doing the tutorial of social interactions. Okay, this is how I make small talk. This is how I do this. This is how I do this. But the tutorial, even if it sort of says like, okay, this is how you make small talk, or this is how you become a good listener, there's no tutorial for forming a connection with another human being. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so what we're sort of left with is people who feel, I'm going to use the word shame, but I think, Ginkgo, you did a way better job at describing it, like frustration with yourself. Why does it have to be this way? Why do I grow up in a generation where it's not just like this sort of lack of family support in terms of socializing, but also like everyone else out there is just socializing on Discord or text or whatever, right? Snapchat. And so you can feel incredibly frustrated with yourself. And the challenge is that what do you think all of those thoughts and feelings do in terms of affecting your ability to interact with another person?
Well, at times I've felt broken. I've been reminded time and time again, of all the factors outside of my control that led me to becoming this way, but I still end up feeling like something's wrong with me. Something's not working here. Something's broken. Something is missing as a human being. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think that's well said. And I know it sounds kind of weird because this is where like I'm supposed to say like, no, like Ginkgo, like you're complete and you're perfect just the way you are. There's nothing broken in you. Like, that's what people think we should say. But I think you actually have a very mature outlook, which is that it's not your fault and it feels like something's missing, right? And I think the reason it feels like something's missing is because something is missing. Like, I want to acknowledge that for a moment. I don't blame you. I also think that just because something's missing, I don't think... So even if we accept for a moment that you're broken, I think you're absolutely fixable. That's where the difference lies. But I think it's important to acknowledge that you may not... Because if we think about even something like language, right? How do we learn to speak? It's because people around us talk. How do we learn to like walk in our mannerisms and the clothes that we wear? So much of what we learn as human beings is through observation of what's going on around us. And what I'm hearing from you, Ginkgo, is that you really didn't have the opportunity to observe a whole lot of social like connection formation. Is that fair to say?
Very, very true.
Okay. So that's probably what feels like. I'm going to use the word missing instead of broken. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to think about it for a second. Like, can you really, like, do you feel like something's missing or do you feel like it's busted?
At times, I feel like it's busted, and that's in regard to changing things rather than who I am right now. Like, who I am right now, yeah, I could say a lot of circumstances led here, but how I fix that, now that it's my responsibility, I am an adult, an adolescent, and this is my fate. It's this insurmountable mountain. All these things I don't understand about other humans and all the faults that end up chipping away at all my relationships that I don't even end up understanding, and how I could be so avoidant of people despite really wanting to connect with them. Yeah, fixing all that, now that feels like brokenness. That feels like impossibility.
Yeah, well said. And I think it's reasonable for you to feel like it's impossible. I don't believe it's impossible, but I don't... Oh, okay. Sorry, did I lag spike there for a second? So I completely understand why you feel it's impossible, and that's simply because you just haven't done it yet. Right? So it feels insurmountable to you because here's what it's clear to me, Ginkgo, is that you're smart, you try, and if you're smart and you put forth effort and it doesn't fix the problem, like sometimes it can feel like, what more could I possibly do? Right? Like I don't even know how to start, or it feels like such an impossible mountain to climb, like I don't think it's ever going to work. Whereas I have faith that you're going to learn how to form social connections. But I think it's also completely reasonable for you to not have that faith. Does that sound okay?
I'm gonna sigh, yeah, and I'm gonna say okay.
You're going to what?
I'm gonna say okay.
When you say I'm going to say okay, that implies to me that what you're saying does not mirror what you think or you feel.
Maybe it doesn't.
So what do you think or feel?
I think that I need a whole rehabilitation program to fix the mess that is me. And I am in therapy. I do have a psychiatrist. So there's that. But like, I don't know. Somebody, if only I had like those social skills classes like that they give to autistic children. I wish there was something like that for adults, because like as an adult, I don't know what I can turn to get past this, and I don't know if I can do it on my own.
Okay. Wait, so are you, we do that on Discord, right? We have a social sandbox. Have you been to that?
Yeah, I've participated in it. I enjoy it.
And has that, you say you enjoy it, has it helped at all? You're allowed to say no if it hasn't.
I liked it. It has helped me. But like I said, also an issue is like relationship maintaining, and
Yep.
so like that's less about maintaining relationships.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, here's the other thing. I'm going to agree with you that I think you need an overhaul. I think you need a rehab. And I don't think it's as bad as you think it is. So here's what I'm noticing. So you're seeing a psychiatrist, great. You're addressing geographical problems, great. You're going to social sandbox, great. And there's going to be more to it than that. And here's the thing that I really wish you could hear, Ginkgo. And you don't have to. I'm not trying to shame you into hearing it. But be patient with yourself. Because thus far, your loneliness is largely out of your control. And you're just barely starting to take the helm. Right? You've been running on autopilot for a while. You're just taking control. Like, you're the kind of person, I've worked with people like you before. Like, I'm thinking about college freshmen specifically, who grew up in households where there were not a whole lot of social opportunities and really struggle freshman year. But by the time sophomore year rolls around, by the time junior year rolls around, they've made a lot of progress. They have friends. Sometimes they have romantic relationships. They have mentors. They have people who are invested in them and care about them. Because when someone's like you are and is very genuine and is trying, because here's the thing, like, people are going to get behind you. And when you say, how am I supposed to fix this? You're not. You can't fix it on your own, but you're not going to be alone. Which I completely understand if you don't believe. But you can't learn to be socially adept on your own reading books in a room, nor do you need to accept the full responsibility. Because thankfully, the world is a place where when people try, a lot of people will support you. And I think that because of things like geography, you haven't had that experience yet. And that's also where, like, if you've grown up in a situation where people were supposed to support you or weren't able to because they had a lot of challenges and things like that, then like it's also okay to like understand why you wouldn't think that other people will support you. But the kindness of strangers is a powerful thing. And like, I'm optimistic that, 2 years from now, you will be in a very different place if you just keep doing what you're doing. The challenge is that there's no way for me to transmit that faith into you. And so I'd encourage you to be patient with yourself. What do you think about that?
I can keep going for the hope that comes to fruition, even if right now it's hard for me to rely on others and be comfortable around them or form intimate bonds that could change. And if I'm putting in the work, maybe I'll see the results.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think? I mean, to be fair, like, I don't think you can end this conversation and be like, yeah, like, I'm gonna make a bunch of friends and I believe in myself. Like, you're not gonna get there at the end of this conversation, right? Like, you okay with that?
Yeah, I definitely still feel impatient. I want this
Yeah.
like fixed now, because like loneliness feels like a need. It feels like something I need to fill up, and everything's in motion, but the whole remains.
Yeah. So that's why, what I'm asking you for is patience. Because this is the hard thing about your situation, Ginkgo, is that you are actually doing everything that you can. Right? Maybe not everything, but you're doing a lot. You're doing what you can given your geographical boundaries. You can't drive, you don't have access to a car, You know, your friends may not have access to cars. Like, you're doing kind of everything that you can. And that's, you're beautifully said. Loneliness feels like a need. And just because you've got the right strategy doesn't make it hurt any less.
Yeah. I wish that void could be filled and the hurt could go away.
Me too. So I have one last thing to kind of share with you. What if I were to tell you that by having this conversation, there are people out there who are listening, who feel exactly the way that you do, but even hearing you speak fills up their void just a tiny amount? What do you think about that?
I would be confused. How could that happen?
It's a good question.
I don't know them and they don't know me. I don't know. That's humans are strange little creatures.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you don't know how that could happen. Is it fair to say you don't believe that could happen?
I believe you.
Do
Yeah.
do you feel at all heard or understood through this conversation?
Yes, I feel happier, and obviously I watch this channel, and other people do as well, and it makes me happy if there are people who feel this way like me. First of all, I wish that was not the case, but if that is the case, then I guess yeah, I'm glad that there's a voice out there that resonates with them.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I wouldn't encourage you to watch Twitch chat now, but you can go back and watch the VOD later. I'm not actually paying attention. I'm just assuming. The other thing is, by the way, you said that, you know, part of the reason you have difficulty forming close relationships is because you can't be vulnerable with people. Is that right?
Yeah.
How do you think you're doing with that now?
This is fine. I mean, this is a space in which vulnerability is expected. In such areas, I can do just fine. Therapy, psychiatry, this Discord server. These are all places where I can be vulnerable. Friendships without that, already, I guess, our relationship being established as having that. No, not gonna happen.
Not yet. So here's what I'd leave with you, Ginkgo. I completely understand that there's a huge difference between Discord server, being live on stream in a psychiatrist's office, and the average friend, or meeting people during the first week of freshman orientation. It's going to be like night and day. But if you think about learning how to swim, we learn how to swim in the kiddie pool. We don't jump right into the ocean. And every step that you take in understanding your feelings, being able to express your feelings, being able to feel your feelings, you level up a little bit. And that's why, like, am I worried about you? Sure. But, like, I have hope for you. And the reason that I have hope for you is because you're showing me that you're thoughtful, you're going to try, and that you can actually be vulnerable. Right? And all it is like, you know how to do it. It's just the situation is different. It's like swimming in a pool, swimming in a lake, swimming in an ocean, swimming in a river. Does it require more skill at swimming? Absolutely. We're not saying that just because you can do one, it makes it easier to do the other. But I am saying that you got to learn how to do it in the kiddie pool first, and then a pool, and then a lake, and then an ocean. And we haven't even talked, we're talking about friendship today, which is on purpose, but then, like, even friendships is going to be a stepping stone to potentially deeper connections, romantic relationships, or whatever, right? Like, not everything happens all at once. And that's why the main thing, and I know it's painful, we're going to do what we can for you in the meantime in terms of come and hang out. Like, we're going to do what we can with Social Sandbox. We're going to do what we can on Discord and things like that. But the truth of the matter is that what I really hear from you, Ginkgo, is that I don't blame you for being impatient. You know, I think it makes perfect sense that loneliness is a need. It's like a hunger, right? It's like hunger and thirst. Like, if I'm hungry today and I start growing wheat, even though I'm growing food, which will eventually satisfy my hunger, it doesn't make the hunger hurt less, right?
Yeah, that's like that Minecraft or that Stardew Valley.
Right? And that, like, I hate to break it, but that just sucks. Like, and there ain't, I mean, it sucks.
Certifiably sucks.
Yeah. And I'm really sorry that you have to go through that. And the only thing that makes me not cry in this moment is that, like, I feel strongly that if you just keep doing what you're doing, you won't feel this way forever. In fact, you won't even feel this way for the majority of your life. That most of your life, like, you know, let's assume for a moment, we don't even, that you're somewhere around 18 and that you've got 62 years left on this earth. And that for like 55 plus of those years, I think you're going to have connections. And that even the suffering that you're going through today may shape you into the person that knows what loneliness feels like. And that may have a ripple effect on the people that you meet, and being able to see someone on a park bench, or, you know, family members or friends or whatever. Like, this is all part of your karma. The hand that you're dealt. Is it shit? Sure. But you're playing it really, really well. And you get to draw more cards. And it's a deck building game. And the cards that you're adding to your deck today are good. But you got to wait for the reshuffle for them to come around. And that's just life. It sucks. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think I can believe that. I think there's evidence of it in my own life. I actually just recently turned 20, and 2 years ago at 18, life sucked even worse than it did now. I didn't have the therapist or the psychiatrist. Instead, I was getting hospitalized, and since then, I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna go to my second year. I'm gonna meet people. I'm gonna get my license. I'm okay with just continuing to go until I get what I need.
Ginkgo, you got to be careful there. Because you keep talking like that, you're going to start inspiring people.
Oh no! I gotta hold back.
You can't be saying shit like that. People are going to be inspired. This is Twitch. This is the internet. You can't be going around giving people faith in the future.
I mean, I do feel impatient, and you've recognized that, but I also feel like, because I've come from a period of being suicidal, so now that I no longer feel that way, I feel like as long as I'm alive, I have a chance. I have a chance to change things. I have a chance for things to get better, and I don't know how my story's gonna end. Could end on a low point.
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe I slip on some soap in my bathroom and I break my neck, and that's the end. But for now, every day, every time I get to live, it's at least an opportunity to live a little better. So
Yeah.
hopefully I get some friends. That would be really nice.
Absolutely, Ginkgo. So it's awesome to hear how far you've come. I think you said you kind of need an overhaul, and I think the really sad thing is that the optimistic thing, the exciting thing, is that you're actually building that overhaul one step at a time. And what actually makes me really sad is that you're the one who's had to build it. Because most people don't, they get help. But if you're seeing a psychiatrist, it sounds like you're out of the hospital, you're kind of like going to college. Like this is what the overhaul looks like. One step at a time. You're taking care of your mental health, you're going to college, you're going to social sandbox and getting better at small talk, so you're not talking to people about password security and they get confused,
Yeah, would be the same.
And last thing, I'll leave you with one last tip, okay? You can't slip on the soap if you don't shower.
Oh, you're telling me to be a filthy gamer.
Right? Next level plays.
Uh,
But thank you so much for coming on today, Ginkgo, and thank you so much for sharing. Any kind of last thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for opening my eyes. I really can't understand you, man. People, they confuse me, but you studied them for like years. And then you talk to them for hours. But I'm thankful that you do.
Yeah, I do. You know, I may be easier to understand than you think a few years from now, because I don't know that we're actually that different. The way a lot of what I am is because I used to be in a very similar space to where you are, and I just kept doing what you're doing. I think you're actually doing a better job, by the way. But you know,
Oh, thank you.
and you'll be surprised. So best of luck to you, Ginkgo. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Adios. Okay. So, hold on a second. Well, that was fun, right? Wow. I love call-in streams. All right, so I gotta run. I'm late, as I usually am. So I think call-in streams, I'm learning, you know, it ends up being half an hour to 45 minutes per caller. Huge shout out to everyone who called in today. Huge shout out for everyone who's listening. Huge shout out for just shout out for it all. For the community, for the people, for being alive, for being human. It ain't easy being human. Like, it ain't easy living life. And sometimes we're a little bit busted. Then we think to ourselves, how am I going to fix myself? Like, I'm so broken. So broken. I can't do it myself. Here's the wild thing. You're right. You can't do it yourself. But you don't have to. Because there are other people here who got your back. Right? That's the wild thing. Somewhere along the way, we start believing that we got to do it ourselves. That's the only way. And it's not like that's a unfair belief. Because how does someone begin to believe that they're alone in life? Because they get treated as if they're alone. They get abandoned. When they have needs and they're suffering, people aren't there for them. And so you start to believe that because it's like that's been your experience, which is fine. But here's the thing. The past does not necessarily predict the future. So if you've lost faith in humanity and humanity hasn't been there for you, that's actually like a reasonable thing to believe. And don't let it become your destiny. Because the only time that that becomes true for the rest of your life is when you stop trying. Right? When I say to myself, there's no one in the world for me, so I'm going to sit in these four walls, and I'm never going to leave the house, and I'm never going to interact with another human being. That's when it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you get out, and if you make an effort, you will find that maybe not right away, maybe not all the time, there will be people who will meet you halfway. Because we ain't going to come breaking down the door and dragging you out there. That's going to be traumatic. And we're too awkward ourselves. We're just stumbling around outside in the common areas. Right? We're not going to intrude on your space. So you gotta open the door and take the first step outside. And people will meet you halfway. And that's what this community is about. That's what being human is about. That's what the world needs right now. Right? Everyone's talking about compromise and building bridges, and there's so much like antagonism. We're so polarized. And everyone's like, we need compromise, but I ain't gonna move. You gotta be the one to move. You gotta be the one to start it. and people will follow you. How do I say that with confidence? How can I believe that? Because this is where we are right now. I took one step out the door. I started streaming. But like, this wouldn't be a thing without y'all. Y'all were the ones that met me halfway. You carried me forward. Each and every person who's come on this stream carries us forward, carries all of us forward. That's what AoE healing is. People like Ginkgo, like, I'm broke. Ain't no fixing me. Turn around, like, inspiring people, like, what? This is what humans are capable of. And the reason that we suffer, the reason that this world is going to shit, is because we have forgotten this. So be patient with yourselves and try. Because you have no idea what you're capable of. Because what you believe you're capable of is born of a lack of effort. And so give it a shot. And we'll meet you halfway. Life is a multiplayer game. All right, who are we rating? What, like, who's anyone from our group yesterday streaming? Do y'all know? Let's see. Let's check people. Power outage, Tomato. We can raid Tomato, but let's see if So let's see. Smirky. Okay, Smirky's not rating. Miss Ashrocks. Not rating. Zerg Girl. Not live. And Zell. I feel like, okay. Zell's not live either. Okay, everyone's doing things right now. Okay. So I guess we'll raid Tomato. That's fine. Arden Rose. We can raid Arden Rose. Whatever. Okay. Okay, so Cult of the Lamb, dude. Lapog. Let's raid Arden Rose. Let's do it. All right, send Arden Rose some love. Happy weekend, everyone. It's been a fun week. 4 streams this week. Hopefully 4 streams next week. We're going to do what we can. Y'all keep doing what you can. Be patient. You know,